Welcome to the Paranormal M channel. I'm so happy you're here, and I can't wait to share paranormal experiences with you from all around the world. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. Thank you so much for sending in all of your personal paranormal stories. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you'll be the first to watch and comment on our newest videos. I truly love being here and sharing these experiences with you. Thanks again. Now let's dive into today's paranormal stories. So let me start by saying this. I'm usually the person rolling my eyes at paranormal stories. I'm not some hardcore non-believer or anything. I'm just cautious. People's memories get weird over time, especially when something scares you or doesn't make sense. And this happened a long time ago, so yeah, I can't pretend I have a perfect recording of it. But I can tell you one thing with total honesty. I believe it happened. When I was little, like somewhere around 7 or 8, my parents used to take me almost every summer to visit family. My aunt and uncle lived outside San Antonio in this 2-story house that felt super new and clean and modern at the time. I remember it was before everything in their family changed, before the tension, before the split. So it places it in my head pretty clearly. My cousin, let's call him Mateo, was my built-in best friend whenever I visited. We spent whole afternoons doing kid stuff that felt important for absolutely no reason. One day we were in the backyard messing around with this sad, half-flat kickball, and later we were inside playing some cheesy little plug-in video game, one of those weird ones with a cartoon-themed controller that never worked right. Ours had this bright yellow joystick, and I remember it squeaked when you pulled it too hard. Eventually we got bored and did what kids always do in big houses: hide and seek. Mateo volunteered to count first, and we were on the first floor when he started. And I remember thinking I was an actual genius, because instead of hiding somewhere obvious, behind a curtain, under a table, I decided I'd sneak upstairs. The stairs were carpeted, and I went up quietly, hands and feet, like some little ninja. I wasn't worried about making noise at all. At the top of the stairs, there was this closet with a folding accordion-style door. Not a real walk-in closet, more like a narrow hallway closet. I thought, perfect. Even though, looking back, it was an awful hiding place. It was basically the first spot anyone would check. But I was 7. My standards were low. I grabbed the handle and tried to pull it open, and it didn't move right away. There was resistance, like something soft but heavy was jammed behind it. My uncle was really into sports, and he had gear everywhere, so I assumed it was a bag shoved in there wrong. I tugged harder, the door finally gave, and something came out. Not slid out, not crawled out. It jumped. I can still see it in my head like it's happening right now. This big, pitch-black, fuzzy spider-like thing sprang out onto the carpet. It didn't move like a normal animal. It wasn't skittering. It was bouncing, like its main way of getting around was these short, quick hops. And I know this is where it sounds ridiculous, but I'm just telling you what I remember. It looked like a tarantula, except wrong. Like a tarantula-shaped shadow. No markings, no visible eyes, no brown or gray or anything. Just this deep, void black fuzz that made it hard to focus on, like my brain didn't know how to process it. Size-wise? In my memory, it was huge, about the size of one of those big playground balls, maybe a little bigger. As a little kid, that might as well have been the size of my entire torso. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even think. I just ran. I got back downstairs and found Mateo, and when he asked what I was doing, I kind of redirected the whole day. Like, hey, hide and seek is dumb. Let's do something else. And somehow I convinced him. I don't know how, but I did. Here's the part that always sticks with me. I never told him. Not then, not later, not anyone. Because even at that age, I understood one simple rule. Spiders that big don't exist. Not in a normal house. Not in Texas. Not anywhere. And if I said it out loud, I felt like I'd get laughed at, or worse. I'd get told I imagined it, and then I'd be alone with that memory anyway. That night we ate dinner like normal. We watched TV. Everything was completely ordinary. And then it was bedtime. Mateo's room was upstairs, the same upstairs. And I remember hanging back and letting him go first, pretending I wasn't scared. Like I was just being a bratty little cousin, letting him lead the way. But nothing happened. No shadow spider, no movement, no sign of it anywhere. We even passed the top of the stairs and the closet and nothing. Like it never existed. We went to sleep. I didn't get sick. I didn't have some dramatic haunting after that. No one in the family ever mentioned anything strange in the house, before or after. It was just one moment, one impossible thing, then normal life again. And I get it, compared to most paranormal stories, that's pretty anticlimactic. No ghost voice whispering my name, no doors slamming, no glowing eyes in the dark. Just a closet door that stuck, and a jumping black thing that shouldn't have been real. But here's why it still bothers me. I don't remember most days from that age. I don't remember most summers, most meals, most random afternoons. But I remember that. I remember it so clearly, it's like I can feel the carpet under my hands and hear my own feet pounding down those stairs. So I don't know what it was. I'm not even asking you to believe me. I'm just finally saying it out loud because I've carried it quietly for years. And honestly, I'm curious what you think it was, because I still don't have an explanation that satisfies me. So this happened about 10 years ago, right around early spring. A longtime family friend, his name was Ricky, died in a drunk driving crash. He wasn't even the one driving. And the thing I remember most vividly about him, weirdly, is how consistent he was. Always those loose, worn work boots, usually Timberlands, and a baseball cap like it was practically part of him. A couple days after his celebration of life, I'm at my family's house. It's evening, kind of quiet, and I'm down in the basement with 3 older relatives, my Aunt Marla, my Uncle Vito, and my cousin Denise. We're doing laundry, passing a smoke around, just decompressing. We're the only ones home. Like, for sure the only ones home. And the basement is laid out in this very simple way. Basically one big square room. The stairs come down and land in the middle. There's this old hanging shade or curtain off to the right side of the staircase, and a single ceiling light over on the left. The washer and dryer are on the right side when you come down, so from where we're sitting, anyone walking down the stairs would be backlit and kind of silhouetted behind that draped shade. The left side is all furnace and storage. Holiday bins, boxes, the whole thing. We start talking about Ricky, the ceremony, and I mention this strange, emotional moment I had right at the end of it. Like that heavy, almost electric feeling you get when grief suddenly turns quiet. Like something in the room shifts. My aunt and I are going back and forth about it, and then we hear the basement door open, clear as day. Then we hear footsteps. Not light ones, heavy steps, like someone wearing boots that don't bend much. And we all look toward the stairs. And I swear to you, we see a silhouette coming down. Baseball cap shape, shoulders, and those loose, chunky work boots. The way the feet landed, solid, slow. The figure reaches the bottom, and from the silhouette it looks like they turn left, into the storage side of the basement. My aunt goes, "Who is that?" My uncle, trying to sound casual but already tense, calls out, "Hey, what are you doing over there? If you're looking for the weed, it's over here. No answer. So I stand up. My stomach is already doing that slow drop thing, but I'm telling myself, okay, maybe someone came home. Maybe I missed a car door. Maybe I'm just keyed up from the funeral. I walk to the left side, past the furnace, past the stacked bins. Behind the bigger boxes, there is nobody. Nothing. No movement. No shadows. No place for someone to duck out. Just the hum of the furnace and the dry, dusty smell of storage. I come back over and I'm like, there's no one down here. And the way my aunt's face changes, like all the color leaves it, she goes, "What do you mean there's no one? Where did they go?" And I just say it again because I don't know what else to say. There's literally nobody else down here but us. And for a second, nobody talks. It's like we're all waiting for someone to laugh and break it. But no one laughs. My uncle just mutters something like, "Yeah, I'm heading out." Like he suddenly remembered an errand that cannot wait another second. We all go upstairs. We check the kitchen, the living room, the hallway. No one. Doors locked. House quiet. Still only us. And what makes it worse is that we didn't really talk about it afterward. Not in a real way. It was like we all silently agreed, don't poke it. Years go by, and I watched him change right in front of me. Like, instant. His face drained, his posture stiffened. He went from relaxed to locked in, like a switch flipped. And he just said, low and firm, "I don't want to talk about that." That was it. No joking, no shrugging it off, nothing. And honestly, that reaction still chills me more than the silhouette did, because I've seen this man stare down real-life stuff without blinking. But that, whatever we saw, he wanted it sealed away. I get goosebumps every time I tell this story. Not because I'm trying to convince anyone of ghosts or anything like that, but because it felt so physical, so ordinary in the moment. Door opens, boots on steps, someone walks down. Except they didn't. 4 people heard it. 4 people saw the same outline, and then the person was just gone. I've had weird feelings before, little coincidences, electronics acting up when I was younger, things you can shrug off. But that night in the basement, that's the one I can't file away. Because it wasn't just my memory, it was shared. And there's still no logical explanation that sits right in my chest. Just the sound of boots on stairs, and the feeling that someone came down, turned left, and vanished. So, my house is old. Like, old by Australian standards. Easily a century, maybe more. I've lived here my whole life, and about 9 years ago, my family did this big renovation where we added bedrooms and redid a bunch of the place. Most of my family ended up on the new side of the house. Fresh rooms, newer walls. Everything feels brighter over there. And then there's me. My room is basically the odd one out. It's on the older side, and I'm the only person with a bedroom there. It didn't even used to be a bedroom. Apparently, it was a sitting room once, maybe a dining room at some point. It's got that vibe where you can almost feel it's been a lot of different things. And ever since I was little, I've had this intense fear of ghosts and paranormal stuff. Like, I know a lot of kids get spooked, that's normal. But mine got bigger than that. It got to the point where I just stopped sleeping in my room completely. For years. I had this little mattress set up in my younger brother Lockie's room, and that's where I'd sleep. My room became this daytime-only place. I'd go in there when the sun was up, grab things, hang out for a bit, then leave before night felt too quiet. It sounds dramatic, but it was genuinely bad enough that I ended up in therapy for it. I'm okay now, like genuinely okay. I've been sleeping in my room again for about 5 years without an issue. But still, I've always had this thing about the house at night. Even when my fear got better, I never liked being alone in it after dark. I don't know if that means I'm just sensitive because of how scared I was as a kid, or if I picked up on something back then and my brain just translated it as ghosts. And lately, I've been wondering if there actually is something a bit off. Not in a horror movie way, just in this subtle, hard-to-explain way, mostly around my room. What really tipped it for me was a dream I had a few nights ago. It started out completely normal, one of those dreams where you can't even remember how it began. Just typical dream nonsense. But then the vibe shifted. Like, you know when a dream suddenly becomes sharper, more realistic, almost like you're there? That happened. I was walking up my street, and I saw this girl standing near my neighbor's fence. I'd never seen her before in my life, but in the dream I stopped, like my body recognized her before my brain did. She looked First Nations, Aboriginal, and she was wearing these older-style clothes, like a simple dress you'd see in an old photo. Not costumey, just like she belonged to a different time. She said something to me. I can't remember it now, which drives me nuts because when I first woke up, I swear I knew exactly what she said. But it was something that made me realize I was dreaming, like she pointed it out or reminded me. And the second she said it, I woke up instantly. And the weirdest part was the thought that came with me when I woke up. It wasn't like my normal thoughts. It was just there, fully formed, like someone placed it in my head. I'm safe here. I'm with friends. Not exactly those words, but that meaning, this calm certainty. Like I'd been told, not like I'd decided. And then, right after, my normal brain kicked in and I was like, hang on, what? Why would I think that? Even half asleep, I knew it didn't feel like it came from me. And ever since that night, I've been replaying everything that's ever felt strange about my room. Like I remembered this one stretch of nights earlier this year, maybe a week, where I was consistently scared of one specific corner of my room. Same corner every time. I'd look at it and feel this instant nope, like there was something there watching from that spot. And it wasn't a general fear. It was really specific, like my body had picked a target. And then, after a few nights, it just stopped. Like whatever it was, if it was anything, moved on. And I went back to normal, like I'd imagined the whole thing. And there's also the bathroom right next to my room, on that same older side. It has weird vibes too. I know bathrooms can feel kind of cold and echoey anyway, and maybe I'm just reading into it. But it always feels slightly off in there. Like the air is heavier, or like you don't want to linger. So yeah, that's where I'm at. I don't know if I'm just pulling old fears back out of storage, or if I'm finally noticing things I've tried not to notice for years. But that dream, it didn't feel like a random dream. It felt like something brushed up against my life and left a little message behind. And the most unsettling part is that the message wasn't, be afraid. It was, you're not alone. So, this is hard to explain without sounding like I'm exaggerating, but I'm not. I'm going to tell you exactly how it's been for me, and you can take it however you want. As far back as I can remember, I've had this thing, this presence, tagging along behind me. When I was really little, like preschool age, I used to draw pictures of my house and my family, and in a lot of those drawings there was this tall, man-shaped shadow off to the side. Not my shadow, not connected to anyone, just standing there. Sometimes I'd draw him outside the window, sometimes in the hallway, always a little apart, like he didn't belong with us, but also like he was with me. My grandma, Nana Ruth, used to laugh it off. She'd say, "Honey, you're just scared of your own shadow." And I'd nod because, honestly, what else do you say when you're 5? But I wasn't scared then. Back then, it almost felt like a strange kind of company, like an imaginary friend, except I never made him up. Then I got older, 6, maybe 7, and that's when it stopped feeling harmless. My dad, Marcus, and I had this routine. Every night, around 9-ish, we'd go to bed. I was still sleeping in his room at that age, like plenty of kids do, and he'd tuck me in, then go take his shower. I'd just lie there, waiting, staring at the ceiling, listening to the water run. And while I waited, he would show up. This shadow, this man-shaped shadow, would pace beside the bed, back and forth, back and forth. Not fast, not slow, like he had all the time in the world. I could see him clearly, not as a person, not with features, just the outline, the weight of him, the way the darkness looked wrong compared to the rest of the room. And here's the part that made it feel like a pattern. The second my dad turned off the shower and stepped out, the shadow would vanish. Like it couldn't, or wouldn't, stay when my dad was there. That went on for months, almost a year, I think. Night after night, the pacing. Me lying there pretending I wasn't terrified, because somehow I had this child logic that if I didn't react, it couldn't touch me. But eventually, something shifted. I don't know how else to describe it except the air around it changed. The room would feel heavier, meaner. Like whatever it wasn't just watching anymore. It was getting impatient. I started doing this little thing to cope. If it paced on the right side of the bed, I'd roll to face the left. If it moved to the left, I'd turn back to the right. Like if I couldn't see it, it couldn't decide I was real. I know that sounds childish, but I was a child. It was survival by instinct. And then one night, I turned to face the right, like I'd done 100 times, and I felt the mattress dip behind me. Not a little, not like settling, like something with weight had climbed onto the bed. My whole body went rigid. I remember squeezing every muscle, like if I stayed perfectly still, I wouldn't roll back toward it. I was so scared my teeth hurt from clenching. And then, out of nowhere, I felt the sharpest pain I've ever felt in my life, dead center in my back, like something stabbed me without a blade. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Not even a gasp. It was like my lungs forgot what they were for. I remember thinking, this is it. This is where I die, and nobody will understand what happened. And I stayed like that, locked in my own body, until the bathroom door opened, my dad walked out, and suddenly I could breathe again. The weight was gone. The air lifted. The shadow disappeared like it had never been there. Years went by. Middle school, high school. I didn't see it, but I still had that sensation sometimes. Like I wasn't fully alone in a room, even when I was. Like something was behind the curtain of ordinary life. Then I was 17, senior year, and it came back in a way that still makes my stomach turn when I remember it. I had come home late from rehearsal. Our school play ran long, and it was around 10 at night. My family was out. The house was quiet in that way that feels too empty, like even the walls are listening. I was exhausted, so I went straight to bed. I fell asleep fast, but I had this dream that an earthquake was happening, the whole world shaking, stuff rattling, that panicky feeling like you can't get your footing. And in the dream, I heard my mom, Elaine, zen clear as day, telling me, "Wake up, answer the phone." And then I woke up. My phone really was buzzing on the nightstand, and my bed was shaking, violently, like someone had grabbed the frame and was trying to rattle me awake from the outside. I sat up, and above me, right above me, was this swirling mass of darkness, like a vortex made of shadow. Not smoke exactly, not mist, something thicker, something that moved like it was alive, writhing and curling in on itself. There was a neon sign across the room, this silly pink, lucky cowgirl sign I'd gotten at a flea market, and I could see it through the shadow. but the darkness kept swallowing the color and spitting it back. Pink, dark pink, pink, dark pink, like the shadow was breathing over it. In the center of the vortex, there was something like a face, but featureless. No eyes, no mouth, just the sense of where a face should be, and it made my skin crawl because it felt like it was focused on me, fixed on me. The man shape from childhood was gone. This looked wrong, bigger, more moss-substantial, like it was wearing horns made of shadow or growing them right in front of me. I remember thinking, no, this can't be real. I'm half asleep. I'm imagining it. I tried to blink it away. It didn't go anywhere. The phone kept buzzing. My hands were shaking so badly it took effort to grab it. And the second I answered, literally the second I pressed accept, the bed stopped shaking. The swirling shadow collapsed in on itself like a curtain being yanked shut. And then it was gone. On the other end of the line, my mom was asking if I was okay, like she could hear something in my voice. And I lied. I said I was just tired. That was it. Just tired. Because how do you tell your mother you woke up to a shadow tornado above your bed like it was waiting for you? After that night, I made my little sister Tessa sleep in my room whenever I could convince her. I played it off like we were having sleepovers, but really I just couldn't stand the idea of being alone in the dark again. And then, again, it went quiet. Years. Until last year. I was 20, and it came back, but differently. Not dramatic at first, almost patient. Like it had learned I'd grown up, and it didn't need to announce itself with a full-on nightmare. My bed would rock sometimes, just enough to notice. Not a big shake, more like a slow, unsettling sway. Every time, I'd grab my phone and check for earthquake alerts. Nothing. No tremors reported. No explanation. Sometimes I'd feel what I swear was my cat hopping onto the bed and curling up next to my legs. That familiar little weight. The warmth. I'd turn to pet her, and there would be nothing there. No cat. Sometimes she'd be across the house, and I'd hear her collar jingle from another room. And the creepiest part? It followed me once. Not in a visible way, but I felt it. I was on a trip, down in New Orleans, and one night in the hotel, the bed did that same subtle rocking. In a different city, in a different building, hundreds of miles from my apartment. That's when it stopped being, maybe my house is old, or maybe I'm just tired. That's when it felt personal. Honestly, that version of it messed with me more than the big, obvious horror moments. Because when something is subtle, it creeps into your day. It makes you doubt your own senses. It makes you feel like you're slowly losing your grip. I got so fed up, so angry, that I finally told my friend Mira, who's into Wiccan practice and protective work. I didn't even know how to ask without sounding ridiculous, but she didn't laugh. She just listened. Then she mailed me a couple of protection stones and told me how to keep them, where to place them, what to do if I felt that presence again. And whether it's belief, coincidence, placebo, whatever you want to call it, after I started keeping those stones nearby, it stopped. The rocking stopped. The phantom cat weight stopped. The name whispers stopped. Not long after that, my boyfriend, Jonah, moved in. And having another person in the space with me, someone grounded and alive and real, helped more than I expected. The apartment feels warmer now, less like it has corners where something can hide. But if I'm being honest with you, I still don't feel totally alone. Even on good nights, even when everything is normal. And that's the part that makes me furious sometimes. Why me? Why for so long? Why does it come and go like it owns a piece of my life? I've heard people say stuff like, that only happens if you're cursed, or that sounds like sleep paralysis, or maybe it's mental illness. And maybe any of those could be true. I'm not ruling anything out. I just don't know. All I know is I've lived with this shadow presence like it's been orbiting me my whole life. And even when it's quiet, I keep one part of myself braced, just in case it decides to step out of the dark again. So, let me tell you what happened today, because I still can't stop thinking about it. My mom and I were on this little road trip, headed out from my hometown and cutting through this huge stretch of open plains. You know the kind of place. Fields for miles, long fences, and those big fancy houses set way back from the road like they're trying not to be noticed. We'd just taken an exit off the main highway and ended up on this narrow back road that kept bending and curling through private land. There were a few cars ahead of us and a couple behind, but everyone was driving politely, leaving that comfortable space you give strangers when the road's single lane and curvy and you're cruising around like 55, maybe closer to 60. We had an audiobook playing, something light to pass the time. The windows were up, the air in the car was doing that soft, steady whir, and everything felt normal. No dramatic weather, no obvious wind gusts, just that constant rush of air you get at speed and the hum of tires on pavement. I remember noticing the rumble strips off to the side too, those ridged lines meant to shake you awake if you drift too far. And then, as I rounded this gentle right-hand curve, we heard it. This voice. Not like someone humming, not like radio bleed. It was this eerie, operatic singing, like a distant performance you can't quite locate. Like you're walking through a parking lot outside a stadium, and you can almost make out the music, except it sounded close, too close, like it was somehow in the car with us. At first, my mom, Marilyn, just glanced at me with that look that says, "Did you hear that, or am I losing it?" I gave her the same look back, like, "Okay, so it's not just me." It stopped. We both sort of shrugged it off. And then it happened again. Marilyn finally goes, totally baffled, "Eli, was that singing?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I heard it." But I still didn't fully believe it. So I turned the audiobook down, then up, then down again, trying to catch whether it was somehow part of the track. Like maybe the audio had some weird background noise or a distant choir baked into it. Nope. The moment I lowered it, the singing was still there, floating around like it didn't care what we were doing. So now we're both alert. I'm scanning the road, still driving steady, but my brain is doing that frantic thing where it's trying to solve the puzzle immediately. I asked Marilyn to check her phone, thinking maybe something was auto-playing in the background. She held it up, checked every app. Silent. Then she paused the audiobook on my phone just to eliminate every possibility. Still singing. We started doing the most ridiculous little experiments, like two people pretending we're calm while absolutely not being calm. Windows down, windows up, halfway down, listening hard. Leaning slightly like that would somehow help pinpoint where sound is coming from. But that's the thing. We couldn't place it. If the sound was coming from outside, it had to be loud, because we were moving fast, windows mostly up, and there were cars spaced out around us. And yet it didn't sound like it was coming from the car ahead, or behind, or even from the side of the road. It wasn't like, oh, someone's blasting music. It was shapeless, like it was everywhere and nowhere. And the voice itself, God, it was haunting. It wasn't cheerful or poppy or anything familiar. It felt like an aria, something mournful and swelling, like a siren calling from far away. The kind of sound that makes your skin tighten a little, not because it's loud, but because it feels wrong in the moment. Like your brain doesn't have a file folder for it. And what's strange is, it never got closer or farther. It didn't fade like a car passing would. It didn't shift direction. It was just present. Eventually, it stopped the way it started, without explanation. 1 second it was there, and the next second it wasn't. And all that was left was the normal road noise, and the audiobook paused on the screen, like a little witness. And I know how this sounds. I do. But I'm telling you, we were wide awake, totally sober, just driving through open country in the middle of the day, and we heard a woman's operatic voice singing with no clear source. So I've been turning it over in my mind ever since, trying to give it a logical home. Was it the wind catching the shape of the car just right? Some weird acoustics from the fields? Tires hitting a certain texture of pavement and resonating through the frame in a way that mimicked a voice? Or sound traveling strangely over flat land, bouncing off something we couldn't see? I honestly don't know. All I know is, for a few minutes on that back road, it felt like we were driving through a place that had its own soundtrack, and it didn't care whether we understood it or not. Okay, so I work at this little antique shop, the kind that always smells faintly like old books and furniture polish. And I'm not new to the fact that odd things happen here sometimes. Like the usual, "did that just move?" stuff. But what happened today has been looping in my head all day, and I'm trying so hard to keep my feet on the ground about it. So earlier this afternoon, this customer comes in with her dog. Sweet little thing, kind of timid, maybe a spaniel mix. And I'm doing what everyone does, right? I crouch down a bit, smile, and in that stupid soft voice people use with dogs, I go, "Hey there, buddy." And I swear to you, I barely finished the last syllable before, immediately, there's this loud, sharp, crystal clear, "Hey there, buddy," right behind me. Except it wasn't just a random voice. It was my voice. Same pitch, same rhythm, same little sing-song cadence I use when I talk to animals. It wasn't muffled or distant like a recording, and it wasn't stretched out or warbly like an echo. It sounded like a person standing close by, just projecting it. Like someone had leaned right over my shoulder and thrown my own voice back at me. And here's the part that made my stomach drop. My coworker, Marin, didn't even hear me say it the first time. Not at all. She only heard the loud version. She looked up startled and went, "Whoa, why did you yell at the dog like that?" Like it was sudden and aggressive loud, the way you'd react if someone barked something out for no reason. I just stared at her and went, "I didn't yell. I barely even said anything." And she could tell I wasn't messing around. I straight up asked her, which would be so unlike her. Marin is not a prank person. She hates confrontation. She hates making scenes. She's the type who apologizes to mannequins. And she immediately got this tight, freaked out look and said, "No, I swear to you, no." Then she glanced around the shop like she suddenly didn't trust any corner of it. We both did that quick scan people do when something feels wrong. Like, who else is here? But the store is small. You can see most of it from the counter if you just turn your head. Marin even pointed out that she'd watched the last couple customers leave, and there wasn't anyone close enough to pull something like that off. The dog's owner was turned away, looking at a cabinet, and the dog got skittish right after it happened. Like ears back, tense body, looking around. And I want to be really clear about a few details because I keep trying to solve it. My phone wasn't near me. It was actually tucked away behind the counter, connected to the shop speakers because we had a holiday playlist going, some jazzy winter stuff. The music never cut out, never paused, nothing clicked or switched, so it didn't feel like some audio playback suddenly fired. Also, the acoustics in our shop are, honestly, kind of dead. Low ceiling, lots of fabric and clutter, narrow aisles. It's not one of those airy spaces where sound bounces around. There are a couple side rooms where sound can carry in a weird way, but I wasn't even near them. And this didn't behave like an echo anyway. No delay, no fading, no bounce. It was like a direct voice. What's making it worse is that this store already has a history. Not like, ooh, spooky antiques history, but real, shared, why did that happen moments. All of us, every person who works here, has had something strange happen at least once. Sometimes two of us at the same time, which is the only reason I don't automatically write it off as someone being tired or imagining things. But today's thing, the voice thing, is messing with me in a different way. Because I can handle an object moved. That could be vibration, settling shelves, someone bumped something earlier, a million boring explanations. But hearing my own voice, right after I spoke, so loud that someone else thought I shouted, and that same someone didn't even hear my original quiet sentence, that's the part that keeps catching in my brain. I'm trying to be logical. I know brains misattribute sound sometimes. I know short phrases can be weirdly easy to mimic or confuse. I know weird acoustic pockets exist. But the timing was too perfect. I didn't even have time to finish the expression on my face. I hadn't even fully closed my mouth before it answered back. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Have you ever had something like that happen? Where you hear a voice that sounds exactly like you, or exactly like one specific person, but there's no clear source for it? I'm not trying to leap straight into paranormal, but I also can't pretend it didn't happen. I'm just really hoping there's a grounded explanation, or at least I'm not the only person who's experienced something this specific. Because right now, every time the shop gets quiet, I keep bracing for it to say something again. So, I must have been about 5 when this happened. And I know that's young, but I remember it in that sharp, crystal clear way you only remember the things that really scare you. It was winter, sometime around 7 in the evening. The kind of night where it's dark way too early, and the house feels warm and bright because someone's cooking. My parents, Mara and Vincent, were in the kitchen making dinner, and I was wandering around underfoot like kids do. At one point, the front door was open. I genuinely don't remember why. Maybe they were bringing something in, maybe checking on something outside, who knows. But I remember standing there, looking into the garden, curious about how it looked at night. Our garden wasn't big, just a little patch with a fence, and I'd seen it 1,000 times in daylight. But at night it felt mysterious. So I asked, "Can I step outside for a second?" They said yes, something casual, like they weren't thinking twice about it. And I went out, just a few steps onto the cold ground. I remember turning around almost immediately, like, okay, I saw it, ready to go back inside. And that's when my stomach dropped, because the front door was gone. Not like it was closed, not like it was hidden behind me. Gone. And not just the door, the whole house, the garden, everything. It was like someone had erased the world and left me standing in pure darkness. Pitch black, the kind that doesn't even feel real. And what freaked me out even more, there should have been streetlights. They always came on at night. There should have been some shape, some glow, something. But there was nothing. Just empty black. I screamed for my parents, "Mara! Vincent!" over and over. No answer. I started reaching out with my hands, sweeping my arms around like I could feel the house again if I just stretched far enough. I expected to touch the wall, the door frame, a plant, the fence, anything. But there was only air. It didn't even feel like my garden anymore. It felt like I was standing in a giant open space that went on forever. I didn't know what else to do, so I started walking straight ahead. And here's the part that still messes with my head. Our garden was small. If you walk forward for a few seconds, you hit the fence. If you keep going, you reach the gate. I should have bumped into something almost immediately, but I didn't. I walked and walked, minutes, not seconds, into that darkness, and nothing ever stopped me. I remember my shoelaces kept coming undone, They were the kind that always slipped loose. Normally I would have knelt down and tied them, but I couldn't even see my own shoes. I couldn't see my hands. It felt pointless, like trying to fix something in a void. I was crying, but it was a quiet kind of crying, like my body was too scared to make noise anymore. And then, way off in the distance, I saw light. Two small strips at first, like someone had cracked a door open somewhere in the universe. I started moving faster, almost running, because it was the first proof that anything existed besides darkness. When I got close, I realized it was two doors. Just two doors standing there, side by side, like they belonged to a hallway that wasn't there. Both were shut. Light was leaking from underneath them, warm and yellow. I remember staring at that glow like it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I listened. Behind the door on the left, it was quiet. Dead quiet. So I reached my hand out for the handle. And right before my fingers touched it, I got dizzy. Not normal dizzy, not I stood up too fast. It was like the world tilted violently, like something grabbed the inside of my head and spun it. The darkness, the doors, the light, all of it started to swirl. And then, going. I blinked, and I was back at home. Not outside in the garden, not in darkness. I was standing inside the house, right in front of our front door, like I'd just been about to open it from the inside. I remember freezing there, completely still, trying to understand what had just happened. My legs felt numb. My mouth felt dry. The dizziness clung to me like I was car sick. I stayed there for what felt like forever, probably only a couple minutes, just staring. Then I ran to my room. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't even peek into the kitchen. I just went to my bed like I could hide inside it. A little while later, my parents called me for dinner like nothing happened. And I went. I sat at the table and ate and pretended I was fine, because I was terrified they'd be angry, like I'd done something wrong by stepping outside. I remember forcing myself to swallow food, even though my throat felt tight. And then, I never talked about it again. Years later, I wrote it down in a notebook, kind of like a diary entry, because it still wouldn't leave me alone. But that's the only proof I have, and even that came long after. Honestly, I still don't know what to make of it. Part of me wonders if it was some weird half-dream, like I wandered into that space between sleeping and waking. But the memory is so vivid. I can still feel the cold air and that awful, impossible emptiness. I can still hear the silence when I yelled my parents' names. And there's one more thing, too. My mom told me later in life that when I was even younger, like 2 or 3, I used to talk about seeing things in the house. She called them ghosts. She even claimed that one time she saw something herself. I don't remember any of that at all, but it always made me wonder if it connects somehow, or if it's just another strange story layered on top of a childhood that was already full of shadows. I don't know if I'd call what happened paranormal. I don't even know if it truly happened the way I remember it. But I do know this. It was the most terrified I've ever been in my life. And even now, telling it out loud, a part of me still feels like I'm standing in that dark, reaching for a door that should be there, and isn't. So this happened when I was back near my hometown, outside Nagpur. And I swear, even thinking about it now makes my stomach do that little flip. I'd matched with this girl, let's call her Mira, on Bumble. She was cute, ridiculously fun, and it was one of those easy, no-pressure situations because I was leaving India soon anyway. I was moving to Canada in a few weeks, so it wasn't meant to be some big, serious love story. Just a couple of weeks of good company and chaos in the best way. Mira worked in a research role at a law university way out on the outskirts. She actually lived on campus, and the whole area was bordered by this massive forest. Like, proper forest. She'd randomly send me videos of snakes sliding across the pathways. Once it was a cobra, and I remember just staring at my phone like, what kind of campus is this? Meanwhile, she was totally chill about it, like it was a normal Tuesday. I'd ride my scooter out there to see her, something like 20-something kilometers each way, and we'd hang out, drink a bit, mess around, laugh like idiots. Honestly, some of the most fun dates I've ever had. She had this energy where everything felt like an adventure. Anyway, one evening, after we'd been out and we were heading back to drop her off at campus, I took a wrong turn. Neither of us really knew the area well. She was new to the city, and I hadn't been around those outskirts much either. It was around 7:30-ish, already dark because the sun had set, and the road was this muddy, narrow stretch cutting right alongside the forest. I remember telling her to check maps, and she's behind me on the scooter like, yeah, I'm trying. But her phone had zero signal. Mine didn't have connection either. She said something like, I think we're still generally going the right direction. And I was like, fine, we'll just keep going and eventually we'll hit something familiar. And we did start to feel like we were getting out of the deeper part. Like the air even felt different, less closed in. We were talking casually, half laughing about how dumb it was to get lost so close to campus, when I saw it. On the right side of the road, just off the edge where the trees start, there was this figure. Not an animal, not a person in a normal way. It looked like a tall, human-shaped silhouette, kind of masculine in build. But it didn't have details. No face, no clothes, nothing. Just this perfectly man-shaped darkness, completely black. And around it there was this weird, radiant white glow, like an aura. It wasn't like a flashlight beam or headlights reflecting. This thing looked like it was producing its own light. And here's what makes it worse. The only real light on that road was my scooter's headlamp. At first, my brain tried to do that thing where it forces an explanation. Like maybe it's a tree stump, maybe it's a dude standing there, maybe it's my drunk imagination stitching shadows together. So I slowed down without even meaning to, because I was trying to understand what I was looking at. And then it vanished. Not like it walked away or stepped behind a tree. It was just there, and then it wasn't. Like someone turned off a screen. I went cold. I didn't even speak for a few seconds. My whole body just went into panic mode, and I remember twisting the throttle and taking off, like pure instinct. Get out, get out, get out. And I'm telling myself, okay, you're drunk, you're seeing things. You've had too much rum, too many beers. This is your brain being stupid. So I shout back to Mira like, I think I need to stop for a second. I swear I just saw something. And then she says, in this voice I can still hear clearly, bro. The chills that hit me in that moment, I can't even describe it. It was like my spine turned to ice. Because if it was just me, I could have written it off as alcohol, darkness, whatever. But she saw it. She saw the same thing, at the same time, and her reaction wasn't curiosity. It was fear. We didn't talk much after that. We just focused on getting back to the campus road, and eventually we did. We made it out. But the whole ride, it felt like the forest was watching us, like the dark had weight. This happened in late 2023, and not long after that I moved to Canada, where I still live now. Mira and I don't really talk anymore. Life moved on. She got into something serious later, and that was that. But she'll always have this weird, permanent place in my memory, because we shared something that felt unreal. Like we accidentally stepped into the wrong version of the world for a minute. And the truth is, I've barely told anyone. I don't even know how to explain it without sounding insane. but I know what I saw. And I know I'm not the only one who saw it. So, I moved into this place about 14 months ago, and for most of that time, I've chalked everything up to normal old house stuff. You know what I mean. Wood shifting, pipes ticking, the occasional creak that sounds like someone took one careful step in the hallway. Sometimes I'll hear this soft little flurry of noises in the kitchen, like cabinets settling or something lightly bumping the counter, and every single time I go check, nothing. Not a dish out of place, no sign of anyone, or anything. Eventually you stop reacting. It just becomes the house breathing. But then my boyfriend, well, I'll call him Mateo, started having these weird moments. And at first I honestly thought, okay, this is probably that half-awake hallucination thing. Hypnopompic stuff. Your brain loading in the world before it's fully online. The first time, he tells me he woke up and saw me open the bedroom door and step inside. He said he sat up and went, "Hey babe," and that I just backed out, like I'd been caught doing something. Then I closed the door. Here's the thing, that night I wasn't even in the bed with him. I'd moved to the guest room because I couldn't sleep, and I had earbuds in. So sure, if I'd gotten up and wandered in there half asleep, it's possible I didn't register it, didn't remember, whatever. Sleepwalking is embarrassing, but explainable, right? Then it happened a second time. He said he opened his eyes and saw me standing near the window, between his side of the bed and the curtains. Just standing there, looking down at him. He said the room was so dark he couldn't make out my face, but the shape, the hair, everything about it looked like me. And he reached his hand over to my side of the bed. And I wasn't there. Again, I was sleeping in the other room that night. So now I'm sitting there like, oh my God, am I doing something creepy in my sleep? Like, am I silently hovering over my own boyfriend while he sleeps? That's mortifying. I told him, if you see me again, please just touch me and wake me up. Don't just stare at me and try to solve it like a puzzle. And then this morning, he tells me the third one. He said he woke up the way he always does in these moments, because he can feel someone watching him. That intense, prickly sensation, like your body knows before your eyes do. So he opens his eyes, and he sees me sitting upright in bed, but not normal sitting up in bed. He said I was sitting too still, too poised, and I was smiling. Not a small smile, not a sleepy grin. He said it was huge, like stretched from one side of my face to the other in this way that didn't look human, like the mouth was just wrong, too wide, too deliberate. And then, this part makes my stomach flip. He said the thing that looked like me lifted a hand and curled its fingers, like come here, like it wanted him closer. Mateo told me he remembered what I said, so he reached his hand out to touch me, to wake me up. And he felt me. He felt my shoulder, my arm, warm and heavy, lying down asleep next to him, while he was still looking at the thing sitting up. He said he just froze, because his hand was on me, real me, sleeping, while that other version of me stayed upright, smiling that impossible smile. I asked him, like, "Are you sure you weren't just seeing me and then realized I was beside you?" And he shook his head and goes, "No, Lena, it wasn't even physically possible to smile that big." And I'm trying so hard to be the logical one here, because it always happens as he's waking up. That's textbook, right? Your brain can project stuff. It can create a figure. It can turn a shadow into a person. It can make you feel watched. But what messes with me is, he goes back to sleep afterward. Also, I'm a stupidly light sleeper. If he touches me in bed, I normally wake up instantly. And he swears he was literally touching me while I stayed completely asleep. So, of course, my brain starts rummaging through old memories trying to connect dots that probably don't connect. Like, a couple months after I moved in, I used to hear my dog, Junie, in the kitchen at night. This really specific sound of her crunching kibble and then slurping water, and her nails clicking on the floor. And every time, I'd look and she wouldn't be down there. She'd be upstairs on my bed, dead asleep, and her bowl would be basically empty anyway. It only ever happened when Junie was staying with me. She splits time with my ex, so I figured maybe she was sneaking past me and I just didn't notice. It stopped happening and I forgot about it. But now I'm sitting here like, what if my brain wasn't wrong to remember it as so distinct? What if it wasn't her? What if it was something mimicking her the way this thing is mimicking me? And listen, I know how that sounds. So I keep coming back to the sane explanation. Mateo is half dreaming. He's hallucinating on the edge of waking. Nobody else who slept here has ever said they saw anything. I've never seen anything. I only hear the regular weird little house sounds, and I'm completely convinced it's just the place settling. But I'll admit it. The detail about the smile, how non-human it was, got under my skin in a way the other two didn't. So I did what you do when you're trying to calm someone down, and also, maybe, calm yourself down without admitting you're doing it. I walked around the house last night murmuring a prayer my grandma used to say. I opened windows. I told myself it was symbolic, that it was just for comfort. And tomorrow, I'm probably going to burn some sage. More as a, see, I did something, you're safe, kind of gesture. Because part of me thinks if he believes the house has been cleared, his brain will stop playing tricks on him. But then again, when he hears the same little kitchen noises I've always heard, we'll be lying in bed listening together, and he'll whisper, "That's not the house." And I'll whisper back, "It is the house." And lately, I'm not as certain as I used to be. Okay, so before I get into this, you have to understand my buddy. I'll call him Drew here. Drew is one of those people who's always had paranormal stories. Like, not in a I saw something once way. I mean, he's told me about figures in old hallways, weird voices in the woods, shadowy shapes near the hospital where his aunt worked. The kind of stuff that makes you laugh until you see his face and realize he's dead serious. And the thing is, where I live, it's the complete opposite of spooky. It's one of those really nice, quiet neighborhoods where everybody knows everybody. People wave. Dogs have play dates. Nothing bad ever happens. It's the kind of place you'd think a ghost would get bored in. So, May 2019. The Toronto Raptors had just made the finals, and I was losing my mind with excitement. I had so much energy buzzing in me that I couldn't just sit inside. I had to burn it off somehow. So I go out back to my trampoline and start doing flips like an idiot, just riding that adrenaline. Drew's on the back steps watching me, arms crossed, just kind of smirking, until he suddenly goes, really quietly, like his throat tightens up. Evan? And I'm like, yeah? What's up? I bounce to a stop and look over at him, and he's pale. Like, actually pale. And that's what got me, because Drew doesn't scare easy. He's the type who watches horror movies alone with the lights off just to prove he can. He lifts his hand and points toward our neighbor's yard, toward this big old spruce tree near the fence line. And I look, and I don't see anything. So I'm like, what? What are you pointing at? And he goes, there was someone watching us. They were peeking from behind that tree, and then they moved. My stomach kind of drops, because the way he said it wasn't dramatic. It was worried, like he was trying not to panic. So I climb up onto the deck to get a better view. I stand there scanning the yard, the fence, the tree. Nothing. No movement. No sound. Just the normal backyard quiet. I wait, honestly probably like 10 minutes. Then I do the dumb teenage thing where you get brave because you don't want to admit you're nervous. I shout, "Hello? Who's there?" Silence. So of course I decide I'm going to be a hero. I hop down and walk straight over to the tree, heart pounding like I'm about to catch someone. I look behind it. Nothing. No footprints, no rustling, nobody. But even after I walked back, Drew didn't relax. He kept staring at that spot like he was waiting for something to lean out again. And that should have been the end of it, right? Just one creepy moment, maybe a misunderstanding. Except, it wasn't. Jump to January 2021. Another friend of mine, let's call her Maya, lives a few streets over in the same neighborhood. One night we're on a video call, just chatting, nothing weird. And mid-sentence, she snaps her head toward the front of her house like she heard something right outside. I'm like, what's wrong? And she whispers, someone just pounded on my front door. Her parents were out of town at the time, and she was home alone. And it was late. Like that heavy kind of nighttime where everything outside feels too quiet. Then, no warning, Maya backs away from her phone, and I hear her voice get shaky. She goes, there's someone outside my window. And I'm like, what? Who? And she says this sentence that made my blood turn cold. He's completely black. Like not wearing black, he's black. And his eyes are yellow, like glowing. Then Maya screams, this full, raw, panicked scream, and the phone jolts like she almost drops it. And she's crying, yelling, it's inside! Evan, it's inside my house! I don't even think. I just grab my hoodie and run out the door. I don't drive. I take my bike because it's faster in the neighborhood, and it's only a few minutes away if you cut through the side streets. The entire ride I'm expecting, I don't know, something to step out in front of me. Something to be waiting. I get there, pounding on her door, and she throws it open and basically yanks me inside. She's shaking so hard she can barely talk, and when she finally does, she just keeps repeating, it's gone. It just disappeared. No broken windows, no open doors, nothing out of place. Just her fear filling the whole house like smoke. And we tried to rationalize it. We really did. Stress, imagination, shadows, anything. But then, summer 2022, I'm in my backyard again, this time with another friend. Let's call him Noah. We're having a little fire going, just messing around, roasting snacks, talking about nothing important. Noah has always been sensitive, I guess. He gets spooked easily, and he swears he picks up on weird vibes in places other people don't. He's standing near the edge of the yard, kind of dancing around, being goofy. Then he just freezes, like his whole face drains. And he goes, very quietly, do you see that? I turn, expecting maybe an animal or a person. He points toward the same neighbor's yard. And he says, there's a shadow, a man. It's huge, like 8 feet tall. I scan the yard. Nothing. The trees are still. The fence line is empty. But then I notice something that makes my skin prickle. There's this weird patch of fog. Not like a misty evening fog everywhere, just a single cloud of it, sitting low in the middle of the yard like someone poured it there. No breeze, no reason, just fog in one place. Noah wouldn't stop staring at it, wouldn't step closer, just kept backing up like whatever he saw could move again at any second. And then the last thing, this one's just me. This past summer, I get home late from a movie. It's quiet, lights off, neighborhood asleep. I step out of the car, shut the door, and as I'm walking up my driveway, I hear this scream, like a full-on, blood-curdling scream, coming from the woods behind the houses. Not like a fox, not like a dog, a scream that sounded human. Every hair on my arms stood up. I ran inside so fast I nearly tripped. Then I went to the window and stared out, scanning the trees, the street, the shadows between houses. Nothing. No movement, no person, no animal, no sound afterward. Just quiet again, like the neighborhood swallowed it. And that's what messes with me the most. I've never actually seen it. Not clearly, not like they describe. But after the first time in 2019, I started getting this constant feeling of being watched, like when you're alone, but your body refuses to believe you're alone. And after that, other weird things happened to me too. Stuff that freaked me out so bad I didn't even want to talk about it for a while. So I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's something real, or if it's some kind of shared fear that's taken on a life of its own. All I know is, in the nicest, quietest neighborhood you can imagine, multiple people have described the same thing. And if I ever see it for myself, I'll never forget it. So this happened maybe late spring last year, back when I was still living at my mom and stepdad's place, before I ended up moving in with my Nana. There was this house up the dirt road that always made my family, you know the kind. Nothing bad you can point to, but every time you look at it, your stomach just tightens a little. It kept getting bought and put back on the market, over and over, but nobody ever actually stayed there long. My stepdad, Ronnie, told me this story he'd heard around town. Years ago, a family lived there and then, apparently, just vanished. Like, they left furniture, dishes, even kids' stuff behind, but took small personal things, like wallets, photos, and paperwork. Supposedly, authorities tracked them as far as the state line heading toward Arizona, and then it just stopped. No new reports, no sightings, nothing. Like they fell off the map. So of course, one day me, my brother Caleb, and our friend Mara decide we're going to go check it out. Because we're geniuses, obviously. The place looked exactly how you'd imagine. The porch was buried in dead leaves and snapped branches, and weeds had taken over like they owned the land. There was even this skinny little tree pushing up through one corner of the porch boards, like the house was getting swallowed slowly from underneath. The driveway had this weird carport thing, just a roof, no walls, like someone started building it and gave up. Off to the side, there was a smaller shed, and behind the house was a whole mess of stuff. A gated pasture area, a beat-up horse ring, 2 locked shipping containers, and a couple huge barn-like buildings that were open on one side. There were also 2 garages, and inside them were these long, narrow trenches running down both sides, like someone had dug channels into the concrete. That part bothered me more than it should have. But the weirdest detail? When we finally got to the house itself and started peeking around inside, there were these odd cutouts in the walls in multiple rooms. And each cutout had a piece of drywall that fit it perfectly, like a puzzle piece you could pop in and out. Some openings seemed to go into the walls. One looked like it led under a bathtub. Another was tucked where a closet should have been. None of them were big enough for a person to crawl into, but still, why would you even make those? Both the front and back doors were locked. We circled the place like we were in a low-budget crime movie, found a window that wasn't latched right, and climbed through. We dropped into what looked like a dining area with a little bar counter, and that opened into a living room. Everything felt like the air didn't move right. We walked down a hallway, 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. The bathroom had a broken toilet and an old medicine cabinet. One bedroom had literally one thing in it, a paperback book, face down in the middle of the floor. The living room had one lonely chair, angled slightly like someone had been sitting in it recently, even though there was dust everywhere. Then we went past the kitchen and pantry and found the master bedroom. And I'm telling you, the second we stepped into that room, all 3 of us felt it. Like a pressure shift. Like the room didn't want us there. It was mostly empty except for this cracked plastic light cover on the floor. The blinds were down on the windows, but one window looked like the blinds had been dragged downward, like someone slid their whole body down them, leaving them bent and half collapsed. But we still stayed, because again, geniuses. I downloaded a couple ghost hunting apps on my phone earlier, mostly as a joke. I didn't really believe they'd do anything. We sat in the living room, trying to act brave, and I opened this one app that showed an EMF meter and claimed it could translate words it picked up into text. A little text box popped up and showed spray. Then a second later, beside you. And Caleb, without even speaking, slowly looked down. Right next to his shoe was a can of bug spray. Not just any bug spray, a bright red can, the kind you'd instantly notice. None of us remembered it being there, and I swear on everything, we would have seen it when we walked in. We're all staring at it, that cold silence settling in, and I switch apps to a voice recorder one that claimed it could catch EVP-type sounds. I hit record, and we just sit there, barely breathing. Maybe a minute passes. Then we hear a loud bang from down the hallway, like a cabinet slamming, like a door hitting a frame. We jumped up and rushed back down the hall, but nothing was moving. No doors were open, no windows had blown in. But that medicine cabinet in the bathroom, the one we'd looked at earlier, now looked slightly off, like it had been messed with. The worst part? My phone caught the bang on the recording. That was enough for us. We didn't even argue. We climbed out the same window like our lives depended on it, but we didn't leave the property. We ran to that little side shed under the carport roof and tried to calm down. Inside were some rusty tools and a torn bag of dog food. We huddled in there, talking fast, half laughing the way people do when they're scared and trying not to admit it. I set my phone up on a metal beam across the shed wall to record us while we talked, just in case anything else happened. A few minutes later, I grabbed my phone to check the footage, and my screen was completely wrecked. It wasn't cracked. It wasn't dead. It was glitching, hard. The entire display was covered in streaks and flashing lines and blocks of pixelated color, like a broken TV channel. It kept pulsing and jumping, and no matter what I pressed, it wouldn't respond. It was like the phone had gotten scrambled. And after that, it never worked again. I ended up tossing it later. I know, everyone says, why would you throw it away? But at the time, I just wanted it out of my hands, out of my room, out of my life. And here's the part that still makes me feel weird when I think about it. While we were inside the house, we kept hearing footsteps outside. Slow, deliberate steps in the weeds, like someone circling the place. And more than once, all of us saw a light flicker in one of the windows, like somebody was moving around in there, even though we were the only ones inside. So yeah, that's it. I honestly don't know what happened up there. I don't know if it was someone messing with us, some electrical thing I can't explain, or something we weren't supposed to walk into. But I do know this. That house didn't feel empty, not even close. So, I have this running list in my phone. Nothing dramatic on the surface, just dates and times, little notes. Except the things I'm writing down aren't normal. They're the kind of moments that stick to your ribs, the kind you replay while you're folding laundry or brushing your teeth, and you still can't make them make sense. There are two that I think about the most. The first one happened late summer, 8/27/20, just after 6 a.m. My partner, Marcus, had already left for work, and my little boy Eli, he was 3 then, was still knocked out asleep. The house was quiet in that early morning way, where even the fridge hum feels loud. I got up and went to the bathroom. Normal, half-awake routine. And when I walked back out into the hallway, I heard this soft crying. Not loud, not sobbing, just a low, sad little sound, like someone trying not to be heard. My first thought was Eli, like maybe he woke up and wandered out of his room. The crying sounded like it was coming from the den, and our place is small, so if he'd gone in there, he would have had to pass right by me. But I figured maybe I missed him, maybe I was still sleepy. So I walked into the den. Nothing. No Eli. No movement. And as soon as I stepped in, the crying seemed to drift, like it was coming from the kitchen now. It wasn't fading away like a noise you imagined. It was there, just in a different place. I went into the kitchen, and I swear to you, it sounded like it was back in the den again, like it was playing this awful little game, pulling me from room to room. And I remember getting this sudden rush of frustration, because what else do you do when your brain is trying to find a normal explanation and it can't? I started walking back toward the den and I called out, louder than I meant to, "Why are you crying? Why are you crying?" And it stopped. Not gradually, not like it got quieter, just cut off, like someone flipped a switch. The silence afterward was so complete it made my skin prickle. I went straight to Eli's room, heart thumping, and he was still asleep. Deep asleep. No sniffles, no damp cheeks, no little hiccups, nothing. And I stood there for a minute just staring at him, trying to convince myself it had to be the plumbing, or the neighbor, or some weird echo. But I knew that sound hadn't come from my kid. The second one happened almost a year later, 8/6/21, around 7:20 a.m. Again, Marcus was already at work. It was just me and Eli, except he was 4 by then, more talkative, more aware of everything. We were sitting together on the couch. No TV, no music, no phone videos. Just one of those rare, quiet mornings where you're both kind of waking up slowly. And then, out of nowhere, a man's voice said, clear as day, "Renee." My name. Not muffled. Not like it came from a TV in another room. It sounded like someone was right there in the house, speaking normally. I froze, like completely still. I didn't even answer, because my brain was scrambling, trying to decide if I'd imagined it, trying to find anything that would make it make sense. And then Eli looked up at me and said, "Mama, did you hear that?" Something said Renee. I felt my stomach drop. Because, okay, if it was in my head, he wouldn't have reacted. And he wasn't laughing or being silly. He looked serious, confused. Then he tilted his head toward the hallway and said, very matter of fact, "I think it went into my room." And I swear, right after he said that, the TV turned on by itself. I just sat there, staring at the TV, and then at my kid, and it felt like the whole house was holding its breath. Those 2 moments are the ones that replay the most, especially because Eli remembers the second one like it happened yesterday. Every once in a while he'll bring it up, casually, like he's talking about a cartoon, and it sends chills straight through me. And the thing is, those aren't the only entries in that list. There have been nights where we've been jolted awake by these huge bangs, like something heavy slamming down, so loud it rattles your nerves, loud enough that even Marcus woke up, and he can sleep through almost anything. And then there was one time. This one still makes my throat tighten just thinking about it, when I heard a woman's voice right by my left ear. Panicked, urgent, like she was right there with me. She said, "Call 911. I felt her breath. That's the part that messes with me the most. It wasn't just sound. It was close, intimate, like someone leaning in. Nothing in this house has ever felt evil. Not like that. But some of it has been so startling, so physical, that it's hard not to feel shaken afterward. And I keep thinking maybe I should have someone come by, someone who actually knows what they're doing, some kind of reading, some kind of check. I just don't even know where to begin, or what to call what I'm looking for. I just know I've been writing it down because I need proof for myself that it happened, that I'm not making it up, that it isn't just my mind playing tricks. Because when it's quiet again, when the sun is up and everything looks normal, it would be so easy to convince yourself it was nothing. But it didn't feel like nothing. It felt like something in my house noticed me. So, when we first moved into this place, it honestly felt like a blank slate, quiet, empty, almost too normal. And I remember thinking, okay, great, nothing weird here. My partner, let's call him Ethan, is the biggest skeptic I've ever met. The kind of person who wants 3 explanations, a diagram, and a weather report before he'll admit something is even slightly off. Which is funny, because when he was a kid, he had these experiences that freaked his family out so much that his mom actually brought someone in to check things out. He hates talking about it now, like he's embarrassed it ever happened. But lately, things have been happening here that we just can't neatly explain away. The first thing was small, but it got under our skin. In the middle of the night, we'd hear this sound in our bedroom, like aerosol cans being nudged or rolled around. At first we both went, mouse, obviously. So we checked everything. We moved stuff, cleaned, looked for droppings, listened for scratching, even checked behind furniture like absolute maniacs. Nothing. No evidence, no clues. Just the sound. Like something was slowly pushing those cans around, right when the house was at its quietest. Then there's the gaming console. We've tried so hard to debunk this one. We turned off any voice controls, made sure nothing was paired weirdly, checked settings, unplugged it, replugged it, everything. And still, every now and then, the console will just turn on by itself. Like someone physically pressed the button. No one near it, no controller bump, no updates running. It's not constant, which almost makes it worse. It's random, like it's choosing its moments. One day, I was in the living room with our little one, Milo, who's about 1.5 years. He was on my knee, calm, and we were completely alone in the house. And suddenly it sounded like one of his big plastic toy bins got shaken, hard. Not a little rattle, a loud, deliberate shake, like someone grabbed it and jostled it. I froze. Full body, stomach drop kind of freeze. I actually remember whispering, "Hello?" like an idiot. Like, what was I expecting to hear back? A few days after that, Ethan and I were sitting in the living room late morning, maybe around 10:30, and the TV was off. No music, no phones playing anything. And we heard this really clear, bright, bell-like sound. We both looked at each other instantly because it sounded exactly like Milo's little xylophone toy. So we got up and tried to recreate it. We hit the toy, moved it, tapped around the area, checked if something fell, checked if a metal object could have made the sound. Nothing matched, not even close. And that was the moment I saw it shift for Ethan. Not like full panic or anything, just this tiny crack in the skeptic wall. He didn't even want to say it out loud at first, but eventually he went, really quietly, "Okay, that's weird. I don't love that." Another thing, this one creeps me out in such a specific way. We have this small canvas print of Milo's photo hanging above the stairs. It's not somewhere we brush against. You can't casually bump it. It's just up there. And one day I walked past and it was crooked, like noticeably wonky, like someone had adjusted it and didn't straighten it properly after. I see it every single day. I would have noticed if it had been like that before. And then, just recently, I was awake in the early hours breastfeeding. The house was still, all the doors and windows shut, no draft, no breeze. And I heard the baby gate rattle. That unmistakable plastic and metal shaking sound, like someone tested it with their hand. I sat there holding Milo, heart thumping, listening for it to happen again. It didn't. Just that one burst of movement, and then silence. But the most unsettling thing, honestly the thing that made me feel cold, was what happened to Ethan. He woke up one morning with scratches on him. Not one or two little marks. I mean multiple scratches, red, slightly cut, like someone dragged something across his skin. There were several, like 7 or 8 lines in a few spots. And here's the thing, he bites his nails. He has basically no nails, and he sleeps in a t-shirt. So it's not like he accidentally clawed himself in his sleep. He even tried to recreate it, scratching himself hard, just to prove it could happen naturally, and he couldn't. The marks didn't look the same, and he literally can't get that kind of scratch with how short his nails are. What really got him was that this exact kind of thing used to happen when he was little. The same weird scratches, the same confusion. He didn't want to connect the dots, but you could tell it bothered him on a deeper level than he wanted to admit. And the scratches didn't just vanish. They stayed faintly visible for days. Now I'm sitting here feeling uneasy, like genuinely unsettled in my own home. Not because I want to believe in something scary, I don't. I want everything to have a tidy explanation. But when your child's toys are making noises by themselves, and the things meant to keep him safe are rattling like someone touched them, it hits different. And then there was this one night that still makes my skin crawl a little. Milo started crying in the dark like normal baby stuff, nothing unusual. And then suddenly he sat up, just stopped crying instantly, and stared into the corner of the room. Just stared. Quiet. Still. Ethan whispered, "What is he doing?" Because Milo never does that. And I remember watching his little face, so serious, so focused, like he was looking at someone standing there. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's all separate little coincidences and parenting paranoia and old electronics being weird. But if you'd asked Ethan a month ago, he would have laughed at the idea of anything strange going on. And now? Now he's the one who keeps saying, "I don't know, something feels off." So, I've lived in Michigan my whole life. 31 years. Same general area, same familiar skies. My parents split up when I was a kid. Mom moved across town, but my dad stayed in the old house I grew up in. It's this big, stubborn, too quiet place that always feels a little too empty when you're there alone. My dad, Frank, is 68, and somehow he still hasn't retired. He's the kind of guy who treats rest like it's a bad habit. Old school, loud opinions, proud, and the type who'll climb a ladder by himself even when everyone begs him not to. He's also got this little ritual I've always loved. We'll sit out back, share a cigar, and just talk about nothing and everything. Nothing and everything. Out of all 4 of us kids, I'm the youngest, and I've always been the one closest to him. So I check in a lot. Partly because I want to, and partly because I worry he'll try to wrestle a lawnmower or a gutter problem into submission, and nobody will be there if it goes wrong. Anyway, last Tuesday evening, I'm driving back toward my apartment, and my phone rings around 8:15. It's Dad. Not unusual. But the second I answer, he goes, really casually, like he's annoyed with me. "Why do you keep telling me to come downstairs? I'm sitting right here." And I'm like, "Dad, what are you talking about?" He says, "You've been yelling up at me from the basement, telling me to come down there, like you need me." My stomach just drops, because I haven't been to the house all day. I tell him, "I'm not even there, I'm like half an hour away." And he gets quiet for a second, like he's trying to decide whether to argue or not. Then he goes, "No, I know my kids' voices. That was you. Clear as day." That's the part that got me, because it wasn't, "I heard something." It was certainty. He sounded rattled in this very specific way, like he was trying hard not to sound rattled. So I turn the car around and go straight to the house. When I get there, he's acting tough about it, but he keeps repeating, "I'm not losing it. I'm not. I know what I heard." And I tell him, I believe him. I do. We walk through every room, upstairs, downstairs, basement, closets, backyard, garage, everything. No one's there. Doors locked, windows fine, nothing out of place. Eventually he shrugs it off like he always does, but I can tell it sticks with him. A few days go by, nothing. Then the following Saturday, Dad calls me around late afternoon, says he got held up at work and asks if I can swing by and run the sprinklers. The system at that house is old. Each section has to be turned on manually. So I'm there flipping a switch, waiting, flipping the next one, waiting. In between sections, I sit on the couch and put on some random TV just to kill time. I'm sitting there maybe 40 minutes, totally relaxed, half paying attention to whatever's on the screen. And I hear a voice. Not from the TV, not from outside. It's coming through the vents, like the sound is riding the ductwork. It's drifting up from the basement entertainment area. At first, I can't make out the words, so I sit up fast and mute the TV. And then it happens again. And I swear to you, my whole body went cold, because it sounded like my mother. Clear, familiar. The exact tone she used when she wanted you to do something right now without asking twice. "Hey, can you come down here?" Then a pause. And then again, slightly different, same meaning. "Can you come downstairs for a second? Come down here, will you? Can you come down here?" Over and over, like it was trying different versions until one of them worked. But that voice was so perfect, it made my eyes sting. Like my brain didn't even have time to question it. It just went straight to recognition. And the creepiest part is, it wasn't comforting. It didn't feel like, "Oh, Mom's here." It felt like something putting on a costume and getting it almost too right. I stood there frozen, staring at the hallway like the basement door was about to breathe. Every instinct in me said, do not go down there. Not be careful. Not check it out. Just don't. So I didn't. I grabbed my keys, walked out, locked the door behind me, and went straight to my car. And then I just sat there in the driveway, heart pounding, waiting for my dad to come home because I didn't want him walking into that house alone without knowing what I'd heard. When he pulled in, I told him everything. Every detail. I tried to convince him to stay somewhere else for the night. My place, my sister's, anywhere. He listened, nodded, and then did the most dad thing possible. He shook his head, muttered something like, "I'm not letting some nonsense chase me out of my own house," and went inside anyway. And I just sat there thinking, what the hell is going on in that house? Because I can handle creaks. I can handle a weird noise. I can handle my dad saying, maybe I imagined it. But 2 separate times, voices we recognize, asking us to come to the basement? That doesn't feel like imagination. That feels like something trying to lure you. So, I didn't even know how to label this when it happened, because it's not exactly a dream story, and it's not exactly just life experience either. It's more like one of those moments where everything lines up a little too neatly, and you're left staring at it like, okay, what was that? I've got a friend. Her name's Marisol, and she swears she's an empath. And honestly, I've seen her do this thing where she'll randomly text someone like, "Hey, are you okay?" And the person will be like, "Wait, how did you know I was having a rough day?" She says she gets these hits, like feelings that don't feel like hers, and sometimes it's like something is trying to get a message through her. So earlier this week, Marisol texts me out of nowhere and she goes, "This is going to sound strange, but something really maternal is here, and it wants you to know it loves you. Like, it's always watching over you." And I'm like, my mom is alive, very much alive. So I text back, "Okay, maternal how? What does that even mean?" And she tells me, "It feels motherly, but older, like elderly maternal." Immediately my stomach kind of drops because my grandmother, Lillian, passed away a couple years ago, late spring, around May. Marisol knows that. She doesn't know a ton of details, but she knows I took it hard. Like, ugly cry, can't talk about it without my throat closing kind of hard. Here's where it gets weirder. I've been dreaming about my grandma a lot lately. Not constant, but enough that I noticed. And it's always this same strange theme. She's alive in the dream, but there's this looming feeling that she's going to die soon. Not how she actually passed, just that sense of it's about to happen. And in real life, my mom has been having health issues. She was in the hospital for several days with heart problems, and I've been terrified something is going to happen to her. So my partner, Eli, and I had been saying, "Okay, this is probably just stress. Your brain is blending the fear you have about your mom into this symbol of your grandma." Which honestly makes sense. Like, that's the logical explanation, right? So when Marisol says the message feels maternal but elderly, and I tell her, "That's wild, because I've been dreaming about my grandma," she goes, "Oh my God, wait." And she tells me that the energy, whatever she was feeling, got excited. Like enthusiastic. Like yes. Like it was relieved I'd connected the dots. And she says it kept pushing this feeling of, "Tell her I love her. Tell her I'm here." And then she tells me something else that I did not expect. She goes, "It also wants you to breathe. Like, slow down. Stop being so hard on yourself. Everything's going to be okay." And I'm already sitting there kind of chilled because, okay, sure, that's comforting. But then she says, and this is oddly specific, but it's telling me you need to ease up on the guy you live with, the one who isn't your husband. Like, keep the peace. He's dealing with his own stuff, and he hasn't learned what you've learned yet. And I just stare at my phone. Because yes, there is a guy living with us, Troy, my partner's longtime friend. And Troy is a lot sometimes. He's messy, a little aimless, and I get irritated because I feel like I'm always the adult in the room. But the thing is, I barely talk to Marisol about him. I think I mentioned him once months ago, and it was basically just, he's kind of lazy. Not some deep conversation about his inner wounds or whatever. But here's what really got me. Eli says almost the exact same thing to me sometimes. Like word for word energy. He hasn't had the experiences you've had. He's still figuring it out. Don't be so hard on him. And Eli has never said that to Marisol. Ever. There's no way she'd be repeating something she heard from him. So now I'm sitting there with all of these overlapping pieces. My grandma showing up in my dreams lately. My mom's health stuff putting me in a constant state of fear. My empath friend randomly reaching out with an elderly maternal message. The yes, yes reaction when I mention the dreams. The oddly specific roommate advice that matches what my partner always tells me. And I'm just thinking, what are the chances? Marisol is completely convinced it was my grandma. Like, no question in her mind. And I want to believe that. part of me really, really does. Another part of me is like, okay, coincidence exists. Pattern seeking exists. Stress does weird things to your brain. Maybe I'm seeing meaning because I want meaning. When I told Eli, he was calm about it. He didn't try to talk me into believing or not believing. He just said, take whatever you want from it. If it comforts you, let it comfort you. There's no wrong way to hold something like that. And that's kind of where I'm landing. Because I've believed in paranormal stuff since I was a kid. I've always felt like there's more going on than we can see. But I'm also not the type who can turn my brain off and just accept something without questioning it. So I don't know. I really don't. All I know is, it shook me. In a gentle way. Like someone tapped my shoulder and reminded me to breathe. Reminded me I'm loved. Reminded me to soften a little. And whether it was truly my grandma, or my own fear and hope and grief weaving together into something that felt like her, it still kind of helped. Welcome to the Paranormal M channel. Can't sleep again? No worries, I've got you. I'll be sharing paranormal stories and experiences from all around the world with you. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. And thank you so much for sending in your paranormal experiences. If you've got more, don't hesitate to send them my way. Seriously, I love doing this. This is always the best part of my day. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. All right, let's get into it. So, this all started about 6 years ago, right after I bought the house I'm living in now. At first, it was my sleep. I started getting these awful bouts of sleep paralysis, like the kind that makes you dread nighttime. I'd lie there, completely stuck, and I'd see things that felt way too real. Hands creeping up from the side of the bed like they were reaching for me. A shape just standing in the corner or at the foot of the bed. Sometimes I'd swear I saw spiders crawling across the ceiling. I still get sleep paralysis once in a while, but nothing like those first couple years. And during that time, little things around the house would happen, small enough that I could explain them away. Like, okay, I'm exhausted, or I'm stressed, or I must have forgotten. Stuff like that. But then, about 2 years ago, it started getting harder to shrug off. I have this big bookcase in the living room, one of my favorite things I own. I'm weirdly particular about it. Everything is in order, lined up perfectly, exactly how I want it. And I'd come home from work and find a couple books flipped upside down, like pages facing out instead of the spine. Not fallen, not slid out, just turned. Wrong on purpose, if that makes sense. Around the same time, my bedroom light started getting messed with. I have this specific setup. I flip the wall switch, the fan kicks on full power, but the light stays off. That's how I like it. And when I'd come home, it would be changed. Light on, fan wrong. Like someone had pulled the chain on the fixture. And that's the only way it can change. One time, my boyfriend Nate and I had a couple friends over, Jules and Marcus. We were hanging outside for a bit, just talking, and we left the front door unlocked because we were literally right there. When we tried to go back inside, the door was locked. Deadlocked. No one had gone in. Nobody had walked past us. If I hadn't grabbed my keys out of habit, we would have been stuck outside like idiots. And I still tried to be rational about it. I did. I really wanted it to be something normal. But lately, it's been escalating. A few weeks ago, Nate and I were in the living room late at night, watching TV. We had this lamp on, same lamp we always use, and it suddenly started flickering like crazy. Not a little bulbs dying flicker, like rapid, intense, almost aggressive flickering. We just stared at it, both of us quiet. And the weird part is, it's never done it before, and it hasn't done it since. Then there was this night when we were trying to sleep, and we both heard my son, Eli, talking right outside our bedroom door. Clear as day, like he was standing there, saying something to us. We opened the door immediately, and the hallway was empty. And Eli was in his bed, fully asleep. He's little. He's not sneaky, and he's definitely not the kind of kid who could pull some prank like that and then teleport back into bed. A few nights after that, I was in the shower, and I heard Nate talking to me. It was his voice, right there, like he was standing in the bathroom having a conversation. I couldn't make out the words because of the water, but I could hear him clearly enough to know it was him. So I pulled the curtain back to answer him. No one was there. And he wasn't even down the hall. He was in the living room. And then this week, it was about 2 a.m, I got up to use the bathroom. I closed the door because otherwise the cats barge in and act like they pay rent. I'm sitting there, about to get up and go back to bed, when I hear a whistle, right outside the bathroom door. Like someone standing there, just whistling once. Not the pipes, not the house settling. A whistle. And on top of all that, I keep waking up with random bruises, little scratches, not always in the same place. And I don't sleepwalk. I don't have sharp furniture around the bed, and it's not like I'm doing anything that would explain it. What really gets me is other people feel it too. People come over and say they feel watched, like the house feels occupied. Friends who used to stop by don't want to anymore, and my cats, this part makes my stomach drop. My cats will stare at empty corners of a room like they're tracking something. Then they'll suddenly bolt, like something rushed them. And I'm tired. I've spent years brushing it off, giving it the benefit of the doubt, blaming stress, blaming sleep, blaming anything I could blame. But it's happening more often now. And after the past week especially, I'm honestly spooked. I don't even know what I'm asking for anymore. Advice, I guess. Ideas. Something I can try that doesn't make me feel ridiculous. Because I'm at the point where ignoring it isn't working, and pretending it's nothing is starting to feel like I'm lying to myself. So, this happened when I was around 12, maybe 13, during one of those sticky, warm summer nights in Southern California, where it still feels like daytime, even when the sky's dark. Back then, my family lived in this apartment complex, and my friends and I had this routine in the summer. We'd sit on the outdoor stairs forever, talking about nothing and everything, just trying to stretch the night as long as we could. Our place was on the second floor, so the stairs kind of became our little hangout spot. One night, it was just me and my sister, Marisol. We were sitting there like usual, half bored, half comfortable, until she suddenly said she had to run inside to use the bathroom. No big deal, she'd be right back. Except, not even 5 minutes after she left, I noticed this glow, like a bright, clean light, peeking from between the buildings across from mine. At first, I honestly thought it was a security guard's flashlight, or maybe someone messing around with a strong LED or something. But then it slid out into view, like it wasn't attached to anyone, just a light. And I'm not talking about a little flicker or a reflection. This thing was a full-on ball of light, about the size of a basketball, maybe a little bigger, and it was bright. Not see-through, not like a bubble. More like a solid, glowing orb with this weird energy to it. Like the edges couldn't decide what shape they wanted to be. The glow shimmered and shifted, like it was alive in a quiet way. It started hovering toward me. I remember just freezing, like my brain couldn't pick a reaction. I wasn't screaming, I wasn't running. I was just stuck there, staring, feeling my heart thumping like it was trying to warn me. Hey, this is real. This is happening. When it got close, it didn't stop right in front of me like in a movie. It drifted slightly to the side, almost like it was circling, and then floated behind me. I felt my whole body go tense, because you know that feeling when you can't see what's behind you, but you know something is there. Then it rose, slowly, quietly. It hovered up the stairs toward my front door and kind of wandered around up there, like it was looking for something, or like it already knew exactly where it wanted to be. I finally snapped into that panicked, desperate mindset where you just want another human being to show up so you're not alone with whatever this is. I remember turning my head, scanning the walkway, the parking lot, the corners between buildings, hoping someone would appear. A neighbor, a friend, anybody. But it was like the whole complex decided to go silent at the exact wrong moment. So I yelled for my parents, loud, like, "Mom, Dad!" the way you do when you really need someone. But either they couldn't hear me, or they assumed I was being dramatic because nothing. No one came, no one answered. And there I was, alone, just staring at this glowing orb like I'd been dropped into someone else's reality. After a minute or two, though it felt longer, it floated back down the stairs again, passed near me, and then drifted away toward the back area between the buildings across from mine. Smooth and steady, like it had done this before, like it had places to be. And even now, years later, that's the part that messes with me. Because sometimes I'll lie awake and wonder, was I being watched? Did it somehow know my sister was going to leave and I'd be alone? Was it coincidence that no one walked by, not even once? And what if I had followed it? What would I have found behind that building? Maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe it was some bizarre natural thing or some explanation I'll never learn. But it didn't feel like nothing. It felt intentional. And that's what I can't shake. And I swear, every so often, I still catch myself thinking, has anyone else ever seen something like that? Like a glowing ball of light that moves like it has a purpose. Because if you have, I would honestly love to know I'm not the only one. So, let me set the scene for you. We live out in southeast Michigan, kind of that in-between place where it's not quite countryside, not quite suburb. We've owned our house for a long time now, over 2 decades, and I've always felt like we've kept it good. Physically cared for, sure, but also held in a certain way. Like you can feel when a place has been lived in with respect. My partner, Mara, and I have raised our kids here. They're grown now. Our daughters especially are in that adult but still close phase. And our family's been involved for years in Red Road-style practices. Sweat lodge, ceremony in the summer, prayer, that kind of life. We used to have a sweat lodge out back, but it's inactive right now. It needs rebuilding. We took it down the right way when it was time, and the space has been resting, but still, there's history there. Our lot's about an acre, with a lot of old trees, big ones, the kind that make the yard feel like its own world at night. And I've always loved that. I've walked that yard in the dark for years, barefoot sometimes in summer. Never had that something's wrong feeling. It's always felt like home. But here's where it gets strange. Over the last year or so, Mara and our daughters, Nina and Elsie, started telling me about this thing they'd hear at night when they were sitting on the back steps. Not footsteps, not a raccoon. They described it the same way every time. This sudden shift in the air, like your senses sharpen without your permission. And then a sound behind them, like a big animal breathing, wet, heavy, followed by this low, rough growl. And then, pause, running, fast, coming toward them. They'd whirl around or bolt inside, and there'd be nothing there. I didn't know what to do with that. I believed them, but I hadn't experienced it myself, so my mind kept trying to file it under night sounds or your nerves messing with you. You know how we do. And then, a few weeks ago, it happened to me. It was around 11 at night. I was standing in the backyard near the house, just enjoying that quiet. Crickets going, fireflies blinking in the tall grass, stars out. That kind of stillness where you feel like you're part of the land instead of just living on it. And all of a sudden, right behind me, close, like 20 feet, maybe less, I heard it. That slobbery, breathy animal sound. A growl, but not like an angry dog barking. More like something big deciding it's there. My whole body lit up. Pure fight or flight. No thinking, just electricity. And then I heard the running. Paws tearing through grass, closing distance. I spun around, and I didn't even plan what came out of my mouth. I just roared at the dark, like something in me snapped on. I shouted, "Hey!" And then, loud, shaking, half rage, half fear, "This is my house!" And when I turned, nothing. Nothing in the yard, nothing near the trees, nothing moving. Just the fireflies and the night like it hadn't done anything at all. Now, I want to be careful how I say this. It didn't feel like some movie version evil. It wasn't dripping with menace like that. But it did feel intrusive. Like something big had stepped into my space without permission. Like a presence that didn't belong, and didn't care that it didn't belong. And I'll tell you something else that made me second guess myself. Our neighbors have two big, nasty dogs behind a chain link fence on the other side of the yard. Loud, aggressive dogs. And part of my mind tried to go, okay, maybe sound is bending weird. Maybe it's echoing. Maybe it's carrying through the fence line. Then, just a few nights ago, another thing happened. This time out front. Our daughter Nina was on the porch around 4 a.m. She works late shifts, so for her, that's basically evening. She heard rustling in the front yard. Figured it was a possum or something. Normal stuff. And then she said she saw movement. Fast. Not like an animal weaving through bushes. More like a blur that jumped distance. Like something went from one spot to another in a way that didn't match the space between. She said it moved up to her left, maybe 50 feet away, just gone and then there. And right as she's trying to process that, our motion-sensing garage light flicks on. She looks, can't see anything, and then she felt more than saw, something shifting toward her. She didn't stand there trying to be brave. She did exactly what you'd want your kid to do. She sprang inside and slammed the door like her life depended on it. And when she looked again, nothing on the porch. Nothing obvious in the yard. Just that light, on, shining over emptiness. So after that, Mara and I said, all right, no more pretending it's nothing. A few nights ago, we smudged the perimeter, walked the whole yard with sage, and steady, with intention. Not frantic, not scared, more like reaffirming. Like drawing a line with prayer and saying, this place is held. This place is cared for. This place is not available. Because I believe something pretty strongly. Attention feeds things. Fear feeds things. If something wants a reaction, giving it panic is like tossing it food. And I've been trying not to do that. At the same time, I'll be honest with you. I'm not walking around trembling. I'm more irritated, offended, like someone stomping around in my living room with muddy shoes. It feels like theft, stealing peace, stealing ease, and that's what gnaws at me. Not terror, the disrespect. This property has been good to us. I've got a relationship with these old trees, especially the black walnut in the back corner. I talk to it. I've leaned my forehead into its bark more times than I can count. It's given us sap I've boiled down. It held a swing when our kids were little. It shades the yard like it's doing us a favor. Even the ground feels generous here. mycelium that pops up golden oyster mushrooms after rain, and once in a while morels like little gifts. Plants come and go, and the ones that stay feel like they belong. It's been a balanced place, and we've had years of ceremony and laughter and prayer in that lodge area. Friends gathered, good medicine, and then this. What really got me too was hearing from two of our older kids, both in their 30s now, that they experienced something similar years ago. They just didn't tell us at the time. Didn't want to freak anyone out, I guess. Which means this might not be new at all. It might just be that now it's pushing harder, or we're noticing more. We're planning to sit down with close friends of ours, Tommy and Ray, who've walked this path a long time too. We want to talk it through with people who understand the ceremonial side of things. Part of me wonders if the lodge space being idle matters. Not because we did anything wrong. We've always been careful and respectful, but because an old ceremonial space has a kind of gravity, you know? And when it's quiet for a while, maybe something decides to nose around. I don't know. I just know this. We've lived here a long time. We've treated this land like a relative, not a possession. And whatever this is, sound, presence, animal, something we can't name, it doesn't get to claim the yard with fear, because this is our home. And I'm not interested in sharing it with something that runs at you in the dark and then hides when you turn around. So I used to work as an inspection clerk for a real estate agency in this medium-sized mining town. Nothing huge, but busy enough that I was in and out of houses constantly. And I'm telling you, when you see as many homes as I did, you start to notice something people don't talk about much. A lot of houses feel creepy. Not haunted creepy necessarily, just off. Especially the older ones. And when you're doing a full inspection, you can be inside for hours, sometimes right up until the light starts fading and the shadows get long. My job was simple on paper. Take photos and notes for every category you can imagine. Walls, ceilings, floors, windows, cupboards, fixtures, everything. If there's damage, if there's wear, if there's anything unusual, it goes in the report. And yeah, houses make noises, clicks, taps, a little settling, pipes shifting, roof expanding when it heats up, then contracting when it cools. I'm used to all that. I'm the kind of person who explains things away automatically. But one afternoon, one of the agents, her name was Marissa, comes up to me and says, "Can you do this one for me?" I laughed a little, like, "What's the problem?" And she didn't laugh back. She just said, "I can't. I don't want to go in there again." That alone was enough to make me take it seriously. The place was an older rental on the edge of town. Weathered fence, dusty yard, one of those houses that looks tired even in the daytime. The moment I stepped through the front door, my whole body reacted. Not like fear exactly, more like this deep animal urge that said, "Get out. Something's wrong." I'm usually alert on inspections anyway, mostly because I'm always aware someone could come in behind me. So I locked the gate, locked the main door, and kept my keys in my pocket. Normal routine. I told myself to shake it off. Just a weird vibe. I started working through the front areas. Entryway, dining space, then the living room. In the living room, there was this old door that opened to the front yard, and the curtains and window fixtures were this dated style, heavy, older hardware. It made me think the house had been standing there a long time. And while I'm photographing the skirting boards, I hear it. A soft shuffle from the hallway behind me. Not a sharp footstep, not a creak. A shuffle, like someone in slippers, half awake, dragging their feet on the way to make coffee. I froze, just listening. Nothing after that. So I did what you do when you're trying to stay professional. I pretended I didn't care, kept moving. Down the hallway, there was a mirror at the far end. 2 bedrooms on the right, and on the left, 2 bathrooms, side by side, like the house had been modified at some point. I went into the first bedroom on the right, and the smell hit me immediately. It was strong, sour, damp, like old fabric that had been wet for too long. My first thought was the carpet. The place was stained, dark patches, weird discoloration, and I remember thinking, that's going to need replacing. Later, I found out the underlay had rotted in places. I'm crouched down, taking photos and typing notes on my phone when I hear a voice. Just a voice, out of nowhere. At first, I genuinely assumed it was Marissa calling out, checking if I was okay. So I stood up and walked back toward the front door, like, hello? No one. The house was still locked. The yard gate was still latched. No footsteps. No movement. I went back into the room, telling myself I'd imagined it. Then, while I'm looking down at a stain near the corner of the bed frame, I hear it again. A sharp, angry, no! I stopped so fast, I swear my heart slammed into my throat. I just stood there, staring at the stained carpet like it had spoken to me. I scanned the room, closet, corners, behind the door, under the bed, anything that could hide a person. Nothing. I forced myself to finish the photos and backed out into the hallway. Next was the main bedroom. Bigger, quieter, less smell. I did the usual: windows, walls, ceiling, wardrobe doors. Nothing happened in there, and that almost made it worse, because it felt like the house was holding its breath. I stepped out into the hall, looking down at my phone while typing, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement in the mirror. A figure. It looked like a person standing at the end of the hallway, just a shape, upright, human-sized. I turned my head fully to the mirror and... gone. I looked straight down the hall. Empty. I actually made this involuntary sound, like a little gasp I couldn't hold in, and then I let out this weird, nervous chuckle, like I could laugh it off and make it less real. Okay, I muttered to myself. All right. I moved to the next room, one that opened into a kind of entertainment area at the back. As I stepped through, I heard the shuffle again. This time it was closer, and it felt deliberate. I stopped and listened, completely still. And then the first bedroom door behind me slammed shut. Not a gentle swing, not a breeze. A hard, sharp slam that echoed down the hallway. I panicked. Full panic. I went charging back through the house, checking every room, every bathroom, every space big enough for someone to crouch. I even checked the back door and the yard, thinking maybe someone had slipped in somehow. Nothing. My hands were shaking. Then from somewhere in the house, a woman's voice, loud and commanding, barked, "Move." And I mean, I heard it. There was no maybe left. I stood there in the hallway feeling my skin crawl, and all I could think was, I'm done. I'm done, I'm done, I'm done. I headed straight for the front door. I didn't care about the rest of the inspection. I just wanted daylight and air and distance. As I reached the entryway, the bedroom door behind me, one I'd reopened earlier, slammed shut again. That was it. That was my limit. I stepped out onto the front path like the house had spit me out. I stood there for a second with my palms on my thighs, breathing hard, trying to get my nerves under control. I remember looking around like someone might see me and ask what happened, and I'd have to explain it out loud and sound insane. I whispered a quick prayer, something messy and rushed, not even sure what I was asking for, and then I forced myself back inside, because the job still had to get done. After that, it eased up. No more slamming doors, just faint shuffling now and then, farther away as I moved through the back area. like whatever it was had made its point. When I finally finished and went to leave for real, I unlocked the front door and heard one last word in that same voice as before. Now. I didn't even argue with it. I just said, out loud, like I was talking to an impatient stranger, Yeah, I'm going. And I got out of there as fast as my legs would carry me. What I do know is this. He vanished for months. Rent unpaid, no contact. Eventually, he was evicted. After the maintenance crew finished up, one of the guys, Dale, caught me outside the office and said, "Mate, that house is unsettling." He told me his team had their own stories. Lights flicking on when nobody was near the switches, strange noises, low moans in the hallway. The kind of stuff people say half joking, but their eyes don't match the joke. These days, I heard the mine's rented out for workers. And honestly, I haven't checked in to see how it's going. Part of me doesn't want to know. So, yesterday, well, technically it was this past Saturday, Ethan and I decided to be a little impulsive. We had the whole day open, no plans, no obligations, and that kind of freedom always makes us feel like teenagers again. We tossed a couple of water bottles in the car, grabbed our dog, Maple, and headed north toward Ukiah just to hike, wander, and see where the road took us. And honestly, the day started out perfect. We drove through these gorgeous stretches of trees that felt like driving through a living cathedral. At one point, we even veered off toward the coast, took Highway 1 for a bit, just because it was there, and the ocean looked unreal. The whole time, Ethan was in his element, stopping here and there to take photos. He always does that, and usually he'll tell me, "Hey, I'm hopping out for a second." So I'm not just sitting there wondering where he went. Except there was this one weird moment earlier in the day. We pulled into this totally random rest stop, one of those places you can't even picture afterward because it's just asphalt, a bathroom, and some trees. I ran inside real quick, and Ethan took Maple for a short walk. When I came back out, Maple was there, but Ethan wasn't. I could see him off to the side, kind of absorbed in his camera like he'd drifted away without thinking about it, which was unusual. Not alarming exactly, just off. I remember thinking, that's new. And then I shrugged it away, because what else do you do with something like that? Anyway, we kept going. We hiked, met a couple of friendly strangers on the trail, laughed at how Maple acted like every single stick was a treasure. Later, we grabbed food, nothing fancy, just one of those quick roadside meals. And of course, we got coffee. Because we're those people. We ended up with iced drinks in hand and the kind of tired happiness you only get after a full day outside. And then we started driving home. Now, here's where things get hard to explain without sounding like I'm telling a campfire story. But I swear to you, I'm telling it exactly the way it felt. There's this stretch of road between a Redwood Park area and a campground. Ethan had been talking about it all week like it was his favorite part of the whole drive. He kept saying, "Just wait till you see it. It's unbelievable." So I was expecting something beautiful. But as it got later, the light started to indicate dangerously shifting into that dusk dark, and I got this sudden, heavy feeling in my body. Like, my stomach felt tight and bloated, and my heart started doing that quick, nervous flutter. No reason, no trigger, just this wave of "please don't stop here." I actually said it out loud. I was like, "Hey, can we not pull over? I don't want to stop for pictures right here." And to my surprise, Ethan immediately agreed. He didn't tease me or brush it off. He just said, "Yeah, I feel weird too." So I thought, okay, we're on the same page. We'll just drive through. But then we hit this bend in the road, one of those curves that tucks you under a canopy of enormous trees, where the branches kind of knit together overhead, and the car slowed. And then it stopped. Not like he pulled over into a turnout, it just came to a stop like his foot decided on its own. I looked over at him, expecting him to shake it off and keep going, but instead he unbuckled his seatbelt. I remember saying, "What are you doing?" And he turned toward me with this blank, confused expression and said, really softly, "I don't know." And then he opened the door. Maple, who usually loses her mind at the idea of new smells or a new place, climbed off Ethan's side and came over to me. Very slowly. She planted herself on my lap and just stared straight ahead. No whining, no sniffing, no pawing at the window. Just still, like she'd turned into a statue. And the air. This is the part that haunts me. It didn't smell like a forest. It smelled sterile, like an air-conditioned off-building. That clean, chilled, artificial freshness that doesn't belong between redwoods at dusk. And everything went quiet. Not normal quiet. Not, "Oh, it's peaceful out here" quiet. More like the world had muted itself. I tried to break the tension by whistling a tiny little tune, something absent-minded, just a few notes, and it felt like the sound didn't travel, like it got swallowed immediately. No echo, no bounce, nothing. I looked around and it was weirdly tidy. No fallen branches, no mess, no brush. The forest floor looked almost staged, and I noticed something else that made my skin prickle. There weren't any other cars. No headlights, no distant engine sounds. Nobody. Not even those emergency call boxes you sometimes see. It was just us, parked under this canopy, inside this pocket of wrongness. I glanced at the clock when we rolled under the trees. 7:41 p.m. I remember because I fixate on time when I'm anxious. Ethan, despite agreeing we wouldn't stop, started taking photos, still from inside the car, like he didn't even trust himself to step out. His movements were slow, almost dreamlike, and he didn't really answer me when I asked him to just drive. And then, like a needle scratching across a record, a black car passed us, then a lighter-colored one right behind it. And the second those cars went by, it was like the pressure popped. Ethan blinked, like he'd just woken up. He rolled the windows up fast, shut the door, started the car, and drove off without me even needing to say anything. And here's the part that makes my stomach drop every time I replay it. When we were fully out of that stretch, I looked at the clock again. It was 8:16 p.m., but it genuinely felt like we'd been stopped for maybe 5 minutes. A short, tense conversation, a few breaths, a few pictures. That's it. And as we pulled away, right as the trees started to thin, some bird, somewhere up in the dark, whistled back the exact little tune I'd done earlier. Same notes, same cadence, like a reply. Maple didn't move off my lap until we passed the campground area. Not even once. She stayed pressed into me, rigid and silent, like she was waiting for permission to relax again. Later, once we were somewhere normal, somewhere with streetlights and other cars and the feeling of reality, I tried to talk it through with Ethan. And he looked at me and said, "I don't remember any of it." He remembered entering that canopy, and he remembered driving out. But the middle? The stopping? The open door? The windows? The photos? The time jump? Nothing. So now I'm sitting here trying to tell myself there's a reasonable explanation. That we misread the clock. That we were more tired than we realized. That the light played tricks. That anxiety makes time feel strange. But I'll be honest with you. It didn't feel like anxiety. It felt like something else reached in and grabbed the moment. And I keep going back to that sterile smell, and Maple's stillness, and that bird repeating my tune like it had been listening the whole time. So, yeah, that's what happened. And if you've ever driven through that area, between the redwoods and those campgrounds, have you felt anything like that? Even just a weird gap in time, or a sudden wave of dread, or like the world got too quiet? You know how some houses feel like they're holding their breath after dark? Heel House, this old, rambling 14-bedroom place tucked into the countryside in Devon, had that kind of feeling. Beautiful in the daytime, heavy at night. And then, on certain nights, no pattern, no warning, she'd appear. The first time someone mentioned it, I brushed it off. Guests would whisper about a woman in pale, old-fashioned clothes. Late Edwardian, they said, moving through the corridors like she belonged there. Not rushing, not sneaking, just searching. Like the house was a file cabinet, and she was sure something important had been misplaced. Sometimes people swore they saw her seated at the piano. Other times, she'd drift along the upstairs hallway and slip right into bedrooms, as calm as someone checking on sleeping children. A few guests actually woke up and watched her leave their room, quietly, as if she hadn't meant to wake them at all. But the part that got under my skin? The owner, Graham Whitfield, that practical, level-headed type, told me he'd woken up more than once with her standing at the foot of his bed. He said it wasn't a nightmare feeling. Not exactly. It was the light. A faint, bluish glow, like moonlight filtered through water, and it was bright enough that his eyes snapped open before his brain even caught up. And almost always, almost like it arrived with her, there'd be music. Not loud, not like someone was down in the drawing room putting on a performance. More like piano notes carried through distance and walls. Soft, patient, unmistakably classical. A few times guests insisted it sounded like Chopin, the kind of melody that makes you feel lonely even when it's beautiful. Now Graham, he didn't panic. He got curious. He kept saying there had to be a rational explanation. Wiring, old pipes, some trick of exhaustion and suggestion. He even tried keeping notes, as if the haunting could be solved with enough data. But friends and family staying over? They were not treating it like a science project. They were terrified. You can laugh at ghost stories until you're the one lying in an unfamiliar bed, hearing a far-off piano, and watching a figure glide out of your room like she'd been standing there the whole time. What struck everyone, though, was the intent of it. She didn't feel angry, didn't feel violent. She felt focused, like she was looking for something she'd lost, and the house wouldn't let her rest until she found it. And then, this is the part that still makes me shake my head. It all shifted because of the most ordinary thing in the world, a stop at a dusty little secondhand place in town. Not a quaint antique shop, more like a cluttered, no-frills junk store with a hand-painted sign out front. Graham was poking around shelves of chipped china and old lamps when the shopkeeper came over and squinted at him like she was putting together a puzzle. "Sorry," she said. "Are you the one who lives at Heel House?" Graham blinked. Yes, I'm the owner." And the shopkeeper didn't hesitate. She just nodded like that answered everything. "I've got something that belongs there," she told him. "Something that needs to go back." She led him behind the counter and pulled out a framed painting wrapped in brown paper. The glass was shattered, like it had been dropped years ago and nobody bothered to repair it properly. And when Graham saw what was inside, he said his stomach turned cold. It was a portrait of a woman seated at a piano. Not just any woman, the woman. Graham bought it on the spot and carried it home like it was made of thin ice. After that, he did what anyone would do when reality starts behaving like a story. He dug into the history. Old records, local archives, the names tied to the estate. And eventually, The portrait gave him what the ghost never had: an identity. Her name, it turned out, was Eleanor Blythe. She'd lived in the house in the early 1900s, married into a family that had money, until it didn't. The story went that they'd fallen into debt, and in the final years, everything was sold off. Furniture, heirlooms, anything of value, including her portrait. And apparently it wasn't just any portrait. It was one of her prized possessions, painted during a trip abroad by a fashionable artist of the day, Rene Carver, if you believe the old notes Graham found tucked into the back of a ledger. So suddenly, all those night wanderings made a kind of heartbreaking sense. Imagine loving something, really loving it, and then watching it taken from you when your world collapses. Imagine the house staying behind, but that one beloved piece disappearing into strangers' hands, lost to time, lost to dust and bargain bins and broken glass. Graham didn't do anything dramatic. No seance, no priest, no shouting into the dark. He just hung the portrait in the drawing room, right where it belonged, facing the piano like it had been waiting there all along. And then, nothing. No blue glow at the foot of the bed, no quiet figure drifting across the landing, no soft, faraway Chopin. The house, honestly, felt lighter, like someone finally finished a sentence they'd been trying to say for a century. Later, Graham admitted they tried to reach out, just once or twice. Curiosity, I guess. A polite invitation, like, "Are you there? Are you at peace?" But there was no answer. And somehow that was the most comforting part. Because it didn't feel like she vanished in anger. It felt like she left because she was done. So when people ask if Hill House was haunted, I always think about it differently. It wasn't a story about a cursed object at all. It was a story about an object that ended a haunting. Like returning a lost thing to its rightful place was all she ever wanted. Hey, so this is kind of a heavy one, but I'll try to tell it the way it happened to me. Growing up, I carried this sadness around for as long as I can remember. I didn't have a reason for it. It was just there, like a shadow that followed me everywhere. I was way too young to be thinking this, but when I was in elementary school, I remember standing in the kitchen with a knife in my hand, pressed close enough to scare myself. I honestly thought about ending it. I didn't do it, not because I suddenly felt hopeful, but because I was terrified. And then time just kept moving. For years, nothing really changed. I'd go through the motions, but inside I felt empty. The one thing that made me feel anything good was gaming. It sounds small, but it was my escape. It was where my friends were, where I could actually breathe for a while. Then when I was 16, my parents decided we should move. Not just a new neighborhood either. Like, we moved out to this quiet place surrounded by trees and dirt roads, the kind of place where the nights are too quiet. The worst part was the internet. It was so bad I couldn't even play online anymore. I lost that one thing I depended on, and it felt like the floor dropped out from under me. That's when things got darker. I started hurting myself. I thought about suicide every single day. I also got rejected by someone I really liked. Let's call her Maya. And I know rejection isn't the end of the world, but in that moment, it felt like proof that nothing was ever going to get better. I was angry all the time too. I couldn't stand people. I felt like I was made out of nerves and bitterness and pain. And then, that night happened. The night that still doesn't make sense to me. I fell asleep like normal, and then I woke up. Except I wasn't where I was supposed to be. I was back in my old house, in my old bedroom, in my old bed. And the weird thing is, I knew it was a dream. I knew it. But it didn't feel like one. It felt solid, like I could feel the air, the weight of the blanket, everything. Only something was different. There was a door in front of my room that wasn't supposed to be there. In real life, that spot would have led toward my brother's room, but this was a different door. It looked old and black, like it had been burned or stained by something. And behind it, I heard screaming. Not like someone fell screaming. Not like a scary movie. It was the kind of screaming that makes your stomach turn. The kind that feels wrong, like it shouldn't exist in the world at all. And the closer I looked at that door, the worse it felt. Like it was loaded with something. Pure negativity. Like standing near it made my skin crawl. Here's the part that messes with me the most. My body started moving on its own. I was trying to stop. I was telling myself, don't go over there. Don't touch it. But my feet kept walking, step by step, right toward that door. The screaming got louder, and then I started hearing whispers too, right by my ear. I couldn't make out the words, but I could feel them, like cold breath and pressure, and something trying to pull me in. I lifted my hand. My fingers were inches from the doorknob, and right before I touched it, someone grabbed my wrist, hard. I got yanked backward, and I turned, and there was this man standing next to me like he'd been there the whole time. He had a calm face, a short beard, long hair, and these small round glasses, like the kind you'd see on an old professor. He was wearing a simple white tunic, like something out of a painting. In this really steady, gentle voice, he said, "Evan, we need to talk." That's it. That's the line. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't threatening. It was almost comforting. Like the way someone talks when they're trying to bring you back from the edge of something. And then, this bright flash, like someone set off a camera right in my face. Boom. I wake up. And the crazy part is, I don't remember the conversation. I don't remember what we talked about at all. It's just blank. Like my brain isn't allowed to keep it. But I remember how I felt when I woke up. It was like someone had unhooked a weight from my spine. Like a mountain had been lifted off my chest. All the stress, the fear, the anger, the constant darkness, it was just gone. Not smaller, not manageable, just gone. I laid there thinking, wait, is this what normal feels like? I felt calm. I felt safe. I felt weirdly grateful. I actually fell back asleep smiling, which is something I hadn't done in a long time. And ever since that night, I haven't gone back to the way I was before. It's been about 5 years now. I'm 21. I still can't explain who that man was, or why he was there, or what was behind that door, or what he said to me. But I know this. Something shifted. Something inside me turned around completely. Even my personality changed. I used to have anger issues. I used to hate being around people. Now I've got friends, real friends. I can actually enjoy life. I care about people. I'm social. It's like that dream didn't just make me feel better. It rewired something. So yeah, I don't know what to call it. I don't know if it was my brain saving itself, or something spiritual, or just a once-in-a-lifetime kind of dream. But whoever that mystery man was, the one with the round glasses, I still think about him sometimes. And honestly, if that was some kind of rescue, then it worked. So we moved into our place back in late 2020, right as everything was getting cold and quiet for the year. The house itself wasn't even old, built in the early 2010s, so it felt like a pretty safe bet. Nothing creaky, nothing historic, nothing that should come with a story attached. But of course, later on, we started hearing the story. Apparently, where our home sits now, there used to be two separate houses. An older guy, people in the neighborhood called him Gordon, I think, owned both. He lived in one, and his adult son Travis lived in the other. And from what we were told, the son's place had a reputation. Like everybody knew it was the kind of house people came and went from at weird hours. The kind of house you don't make eye contact with when you drive by. Eventually, the police raided it. After that, Gordon sold the whole stretch of land to a local builder. The old houses were torn down, and a few newer homes went up in their place, including ours. I'm not saying I know exactly what happened back then. I don't. But you hear raid, you hear drug house, and your brain fills in the blanks, you know? Anyway, when we first moved in, everything was honestly great. The house felt comfortable, normal. We were happy, settled. And then, I started noticing little things. It's hard to explain without sounding dramatic, but I'd catch what looked like a shadow out of the corner of my eye, like a silhouette shifting in a doorway or passing down a hall. And it wasn't constant or anything, just enough to make me pause and go, wait, was that something? It didn't freak me out. Not really. I figured I was tired, stressed, imagining things. So I mostly ignored it. Then a few months later, we had this couple over for dinner, our friends Maya and Chris. We're eating, talking, totally normal night. And at one point, Maya steps out onto the back patio. A minute later, she looks back in through the kitchen door and just freezes, like her whole face changed. She actually gasped, full-on, audible gasp. And she goes, "I just saw someone standing there, right in the doorway." She described it as a dark figure, like a shadow man, just standing still. And the way she said it, she wasn't joking. She wasn't trying to spook anyone. She looked genuinely startled. Chris kind of laughed like, "Sure you did." And we all tried to play it off, but my stomach dropped because I had seen something similar. I told her, "Okay, you're going to think I'm crazy, but I've noticed shadows too." After that, though, things calmed down. Like nothing. For a long time. Fast forward to 2023. We've got a little one now, our toddler, Beck, who's at that stage where he's glued to my wife, Lena, constantly. He'd been sleeping in our bed a lot, and I'd end up on the couch more nights than I'd like to admit, just so everyone could actually get some sleep. And one night, this is the one that still gives me that weird heat in my chest when I think about it. I wake up, and I'm instantly alert. Like my body woke up before my brain did. I open my eyes, and I swear I see a dark silhouette standing in the living room, maybe 10 feet away from the couch. Not moving, just there. And listen, I'm not proud of this, but I think I yelled. Like a real, startled, half-asleep scream. Because the next morning Lena was teasing me. She's like, "What was that last night? I heard you from the bedroom." I tried to laugh it off, but I remember sitting there thinking, okay, that one didn't feel like a trick of the light. I got up, turned them off, checked the doors out of habit, and went back to bed. A few nights after that, I wake up again, dead middle of the night, to this sound that's so specific it's hard to mistake. Like a hand slapping the blinds. Not ripping them or pounding them, but a steady smack, smack, against the slats. Harder than a breeze. Harder than something shifting from air pressure. It sounded like someone testing them. I just laid there listening, completely still, trying to decide if I was about to get up and investigate, or if I was about to pretend I never heard it. And honestly, I didn't find some dramatic explanation. No big ending. No, then we moved out the next day. We didn't. Because the truth is, we love this house. We really do. It's home. It's where our life is. And whatever this is, if it's anything at all, it hasn't felt violent or threatening. More like strange. Like the house has an echo of something that happened long before we showed up. So yeah, I don't even know what I'm looking for by telling you this. Maybe just to say it out loud. Maybe to see if it sounds as weird to someone else as it feels when you're lying there in the dark, staring at a doorway that suddenly feels just a little too full. But all in all, I'm not panicking. I'm just curious, and maybe a little creeped out. Could be nothing at all, but it's definitely interesting. So, let me take you back to the early 90s, around 93, I think. I was about 8, maybe 9, and my baby sister Ellie had just arrived, so our little place suddenly felt tiny. There were 6 of us all together, and because money was always tight, we'd been on a council waiting list for what felt like forever. When we finally got offered a house, it felt like we'd won something. It was a pretty normal 3-bedroom semi with a big back garden. Honestly, the garden was amazing. For a few weeks, everything was fine, even exciting. And then, something shifted. I was a laid-back kid. No big fears, no anxiety, nothing like that. But about a month after we moved in, I started getting this creeping unease. Like the air inside the house had weight to it. That's the only way I can describe it. Like you were walking around with something pressing down on you. The worst of it was in the bedroom I shared with my older brother, Callum. During the day, it was faint, but at night, it was like someone was there, watching. Not in a dramatic Hollywood way, more like that awful feeling you get when you're sure you're being stared at, even though you can't prove it. Then came the sounds. My parents wrote everything off as old house noises, pipes clanking under the floorboards, soft scratching up in the loft, the usual stuff. But there was one sound I couldn't explain, and it's the one that still makes my skin prickle when I think about it. It was like whispering, like a television turned down so low you can't catch the words, only the shape of them. A muffled, bassy murmur. You could hear it, but you couldn't understand it. And somehow, that made it worse, because my brain kept trying to turn it into language. After a few months, I was a mess. I'd sit at the top of the stairs crying night after night, too scared to go into the bedroom, too scared to even turn around and look down the hallway behind me. My parents thought I was playing up, trying to dodge bedtime, trying to get attention. So they ignored it. And most nights, I'd just fall asleep right there on the landing. Then one evening, my mom and dad had a neighbor over. Just a casual drink, a bit of a chat. I remember lying there on the stairs, pretending I was asleep, listening. My mom started telling her about me, the crying, the fear, the strange things I'd been saying. And the neighbor, this woman named Denise, gave a little laugh and went, "Oh, it'll be old Arthur then." I remember lifting my head like, "What?" She said there'd been an elderly man living in the house before us. Quiet, kept to himself. Apparently he kept pigeons, had them out back, and always had a couple of dogs. And then she said, all casual, like she was talking about the weather, that he'd died in the house. And nobody found him for ages. Not days. Months. She said the council only got involved because the garden had turned into a jungle, brambles everywhere, and people started complaining about the smell. The place had been empty for a while after that, while they cleaned it and made it fit to rent again. I don't know what happened in my head after hearing that, but it was like a switch flipped. I went from frightened kid scared to absolutely convinced something was wrong in that house. My parents finally clocked that this wasn't me being dramatic. Not long after, we managed to do a house swap closer to my nan, who wasn't well at the time. We stayed in that place about a year in total, but it felt longer, like it left a mark on me. And here's the part that gets me. I got chatting to one of his colleagues. Her name was Mariah, and we started talking about the old area. Somehow that house came up. I made a joke like, "Oh yeah, the haunted one." And she laughed, this weird little laugh, and said, "Wait, are you talking about the house on Hawthorne Close?" I just stared at her. Turns out she'd rented it within the last year, and she told me, no hesitation, that she lasted 3 weeks. 3. Because her kids started complaining about the same things I used to. Feeling watched at night, weird noises, that heavy feeling in the air. Then she went quiet and said the final straw happened when she was home alone. She swore a broom was thrown, properly thrown, down the stairs at her, like someone had picked it up and hurled it, hard. She said she grabbed her keys and the kids and didn't go back in that house unless she absolutely had to. And the cherry on top? She said the neighbor next door told her it's basically a running joke on the street, that the house is haunted by an old man, and the story people tell is that he was eaten by his own dogs. I just sat there, listening to her, feeling about 8 years old again, because for years I'd told myself it was nothing, that I was a kid in a dark house, letting my imagination run wild, that my brain was just filling in gaps. But hearing someone else, years later, no connection to me, describe the same feelings, the same sort of experiences, it was strange, kind of bittersweet. Like that chapter of my life reached out and tapped me on the shoulder and went, "You weren't imagining everything." And honestly, I still don't know what I believe, but I know that house made me feel something I've never felt anywhere else before, or since. And part of me still wonders if I was right all along. So, this happened a few years back when I was working nights at a big retail store in Conroe, Texas, around 2018 or so. I was pretty close with a coworker named Marisol. She was older than me, the kind of woman who always showed up and did her job, but you could feel this quiet weight around her, like she'd been carrying something heavy for a long time. One afternoon, she pulled me aside and asked, real softly, if I'd be willing to stay the night at her place on a certain date. At first I thought maybe she was sick or scared to be alone, but then she told me why. It was the anniversary of her son's death. She'd been thinking about reading his autopsy report, but she didn't know if she could handle it. And she lived alone, no family nearby, no one to sit with her or distract her, even just for one night. I told her yes, of course I did. And then I went home and tried to carry on like it was just a normal plan. But the next night, before I ever went to her place, something happened that still makes my stomach flip when I think about it. I was at home, doing one of my favorite things, coloring. I had one of those super detailed fantasy coloring books. You know, tiny patterns, vines, animals hidden in leaves. I was totally relaxed. And then, out of nowhere, it was like my brain got hijacked. I didn't see something with my eyes. It was more like a sudden memory that didn't belong to me. A man's image just snapped into my mind, sharp as a photograph. He looked ordinary, but weirdly specific. Buzzed hair, a baseball cap, an old white sleeveless shirt, and faded denim jeans. The kind that look like they've been worn every day for years. And the part that made my skin go cold, he was missing part of one ear, like it had been torn or blown away. I could not shake it. I tried going back to coloring and telling myself, okay, that was a random intrusive thought. But it wouldn't stop. The image stayed planted in my head. And then came the words. Not like I heard a voice in the room, more like a sentence drifting through my thoughts that didn't feel like mine. Tell Mama I'm okay. I'm all right. It just kept repeating, over and over. Tell Mama I'm okay. I remember actually putting my pencil down and sitting there like, what is happening to me? Because I'm not someone who normally has experiences like that. I don't mess with seances. I don't go looking for ghosts. I'm just me. Finally, in my head, I kind of snapped back at it, at him, at whatever it was. Like, who are you? Why are you in my mind? And the only thing that came back was the same message. Tell Mama I'm okay. Then another phrase dropped in, just as clearly. Blue flowers. Tell her about blue flowers. She'll know. That's when I got scared. Not horror movie scared. More like, this is going to break somebody's heart scared. Because I knew exactly who Mama was. And I avoided Marisol the next day. I'm not proud of that, but I did. I kept thinking, what if I'm wrong? What if I say this and I hurt her and I look completely unhinged? I hadn't even known what her son looked like. She'd never described him. She'd never told me how he died. So why did I have this whole picture in my head? I asked another coworker, someone I trusted, without giving all the details, just enough to say, something weird happened, and I think I need to tell Marisol something, but I'm terrified. And my coworker just looked at me and said, if it's for her, you have to. She didn't interrupt once. She just stared at me, like she was trying to decide whether I was lying or crazy or something else. And the second I finished, her face crumpled. She broke. Not just teary-eyed, she collapsed into this deep, shaking sob that sounded like it had been stored up for years. I panicked. I grabbed her hands. I started apologizing over and over like, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have said anything. And she cut me off. Through tears, she said, No, don't you apologize. Then she told me the truth she'd never said out loud at work. Her son had taken his own life. He shot himself in the head. And that's why, the ear. Then she said, almost whispering, and his favorite flowers were bluebonnets. I swear to you, I felt my whole body go numb. She told me she'd been praying, begging, really, for a sign. She wanted to know if she should read the autopsy report, if it would bring her closure or just rip her open again. And she'd asked him specifically, if you don't want me to read it, please send me something, anything. And then I showed up with a message. Tell Mama I'm okay. Blue flowers. We stood out there in the parking lot for a long time. The air felt thick, like the world had slowed down around us. I hugged her, and she kept repeating, He's okay, he's okay. I went home that night and just sat in silence. I couldn't even explain what I was feeling. I wasn't proud or excited or anything like that. I was just stunned. And honestly, a little shaken. Because nothing like that had ever happened to me before. Not once. And it never happened again. So I still don't know what I am in that story. I don't know if I was just in the right place at the right time, or if, for one strange moment, I was a conduit for something I can't explain. All I know is this. It felt like he didn't want her to hurt herself by digging into details she could never unsee. It felt like he wanted her to hold on to the only thing that might actually bring her peace. That he was okay. And sometimes, even now, I wonder, why me? Why that night? Why did it come through so clearly? I still don't have an answer, but I'll never forget it. Okay, so this happened not too long ago, over the course of maybe 5 months, give or take. And I'm going to tell it like I lived it, in chunks, because if I try to do the whole thing in one go, my brain will wander off and start thinking about laundry or soup or the concept of time. So first, you should know, I've always been a ridiculously vivid dreamer. Even as a kid, I'd have these repeating dreams about specific faces, specific streets, specific rooms, and then years later I'd stumble into those exact people or places in real life, like my subconscious had been quietly pinning them on a corkboard for later. So I learned to pay attention, not in a "I'm special" way, more like, okay, clearly my brain is doing something weird again. Then, last year, this old woman started showing up in my dreams. But here's the thing, I wasn't dreaming about her. It was more like she would just appear, almost like she'd stepped into the dream from somewhere else. No dialogue, no storyline, nothing symbolic, just her, interrupting everything. And the moment she arrived, I'd pop awake like someone had yanked me by the collar. She had this pale, drawn face, deep-set eyes, a mouth that looked permanently unimpressed with the human experience. And she wore these faded robes that felt almost old world, like something between a monk and a peasant dress, honestly, kind of medieval. Tall, too. Too tall. The vibe was very stern statue in a forgotten church. Not exactly comforting. This went on for a couple of weeks, not every night at first, but it started happening more often. And then I noticed something that made my stomach do that slow little drop. Every time she appeared, I woke up at the exact same time. 3:30 a.m. on the dot. Now, I'm observant, but I can also be hilariously slow at connecting dots when I want things to be normal. So I was like, sure, it's probably nothing. Right up until the night it very much became something. Because one night, the entire apartment jolted awake. Me, my partner Miles, the dog, the cat, everyone. Because one of the guest room doors slammed shut with this violent, final-sounding bang. And yep, you guessed it. 3:30 a.m. We live somewhere warm, like humid warm, so we sleep with the windows open. And we're close enough to the water that wind sometimes whips through and makes the curtains jump, frames rattle, all of that. But that night, the air was dead still. No breeze, no weather, nothing. Also, these weren't light doors. These were heavy wooden doors, the kind that feel like they belong in an old hotel. And we had these strong wall magnets near the baseboards that hold the doors open. You have to tug to pull a door off them. So for that door to slam shut like that, it wasn't a casual drift. And in a moment of pure, classic horror movie decision-making, I got up alone to investigate. Because of course I did. I opened the guest room door and stepped inside, and immediately, it felt like I'd walked into a refrigerator. Like sharp, unnatural cold. The kind that makes your skin tighten. Which again, makes no sense. Our place never gets that cold. Ever. And standing there, I could feel it. Presence. Not in a jump scare way. More like the room had an extra weight in it. Like the air had a mind. I didn't feel threatened exactly. I wasn't trembling. But I knew I wasn't alone in there. And in my head I just went, oh, it's her. When I crawled back into bed, I leaned close to Miles and whispered, half awake, like I was commenting on the weather, I think we have a ghost. He made a noise that was basically, "Oomph," and we all went back to sleep. But after that, I started noticing things. Like once your brain admits, okay, something's off, you can't unsee it. And Miles, who stayed up late gaming, started seeing her too. Not full on, not like, hello ma'am, but like a shape drifting from room to room, or a figure standing just outside his peripheral vision. Enough to make him pause and take his headphones off and go, babe, no. She never really bothered me, but the constant movement, the pacing through the space, it was unsettling everyone else. It felt like she wanted my attention, specifically, like she was waiting for me to do something. The problem was, I'm sensitive, but I'm not exactly trained in how to have a calm conversation with an ancient, terrifying dream nun. So I called my friend Leora. Leora is one of those people who can tune in, like it's a radio station. She's a channeler, very grounded, very normal about it, which somehow makes it even weirder. A session with her feels like chatting over tea, except then she'll suddenly say something so specific it makes your scalp prickle. So I told her everything. The dreams, the door slam, the cold, the timing. We opened the session and almost immediately she described the woman. Perfectly. The height, the robes, the hollow eyes, the harsh mouth. Like she'd seen her herself. And then she got quiet for a while. Like she was listening to something I couldn't hear. Finally, she said, very carefully, "You knew her before." And what she explained, this is where it gets heavy. She said that a long time ago, she placed it around the late 1400s or early 1500s, I'd been under this woman's control. Not a friendly mentorship, more like captivity dressed up as teaching. That I'd lived in her house, kept hidden, learning practices I didn't fully understand, working with energies that weren't exactly benign. That she dictated everything. When I slept, when I ate, whether I was allowed outside. That the relationship was power-heavy, manipulative, and that she benefited far more than I did. And I remember sitting there like, okay, cool, love that for me. So I asked the obvious question, why now? What does she want? And Leora said, she wants to teach you again. She thinks it's her turn to come back into your life, to help sharpen your intuition. She'll wait until you're ready. And if you don't want this, she will leave, but you have to tell her to. Then she checked in with my guides, because yes, apparently I have a celestial advisory board, and their energy was basically one big caution sign. Like, be careful. If you engage, be crystal clear on your boundaries. And also, this part made my stomach twist. She warned that the darker energies connected to that old life might still recognize me. Like old acquaintances hearing your name again and showing up uninvited. And I've dealt with dark attachments before. Once was enough, so I was not thrilled. But I'm also a curious idiot, so part of me went, well, what if I could learn something? So with Leora's help, I essentially told the old woman, you can stay for now, but you need to stop creeping around my home. Stop scaring the animals. Stop terrorizing my sleep. If you're waiting, you wait respectfully. We closed the session. I went home, and for a moment, I thought it worked. And then the apartment went completely sideways. For the next few days, it was chaos. Random knocks, shifting shadows, that feeling of movement just out of view. The pets were constantly alert, nervous, skittish. Miles and I barely slept. And when we did, the dreams were intense and nasty, like our minds were being dragged through muddy water. I'd find myself whispering into empty rooms, hey, we had an agreement. You can't stay if this keeps happening. Which, yes, I know. Issuing ultimatums to invisible entities is not exactly a power move, but I was tired. Eventually things calmed down again, sort of. But then came the smell. So now I wasn't just dreaming her. I wasn't just sensing her. I was smelling her. Nope, absolutely not. I knew then. She had to go. But I also knew I didn't have the strength, or honestly, the clean focus, to do it alone. And that's when my other friend came into it. Santi, who's a shamanic practitioner. He was visiting, and when I told him what was happening, he didn't flinch. He just went, okay, we can clear it. Then he listed what I needed to gather. Florida water, red and white carnations, sandalwood oil, sage, candles, a bell, newspaper. And then, casually, he said the word exorcism, which is one of those words that makes your body go cold even if you don't believe in it. The night before he came over, I was nauseous, like deep, rolling nausea that wouldn't quit. I barely slept. The dreams were awful. The pets were edgy. Miles was tense. The whole apartment felt like it was holding its breath. In the morning, after Miles left for work, Santi arrived and immediately had me open every window and door. We lit candles. We smudged every corner. And the sage, this was wild. It didn't just smoke. It cracked and popped, spitting little sparks into the air like it was angry. I'm not proud to say it, but I sacrificed 2 duvet covers that day. Little burn holes. Tiny casualties of spiritual warfare. Both animals vanished under their beds and stayed there like, "Good luck, humans." Santi pulled out his phone compass to confirm directions for calling the corners. East, west, north, south. And his compass was completely off. Like, wrong enough to notice. I corrected him because I know the layout of my home, but I remember thinking, is she messing with this? Then we started. Santi began drumming, low, steady, like a heartbeat, and calling on protectors, the elements, the animal spirits, all of it. I followed behind, ringing my altar bell while he sprayed Florida water through the space. And I swear to you, 2 thoughts kept looping in my head the entire time. What are the neighbors thinking? I am absolutely going to throw up. Spoiler, I was right. He moved room to room with the red carnations, dipping them in the spirit water and sweeping them through the air like he was brushing something invisible off the walls. He tossed the used flowers onto newspaper spread out on the coffee table. And halfway through, he suddenly stopped, rushed to the bathroom, and got violently ill. And the second he did, my body went, "Oh, we're doing this too." And I sprinted for the other bathroom. 2 grown adults, spiritually cleansing an apartment, simultaneously throwing up in separate bathrooms. Just very glamorous work. When we recovered, he finished the ritual, drumming faster now, singing loud, like he was pushing something out with sound. And I could feel the energy shifting, like pressure changing before a storm breaks. My throat was raw from smoke and being sick, but I joined in anyway. I sang as loud as I could, because something in me knew. Whatever this was, it responded to force, to intention, to vibration. When it was over, he placed the white carnations in a vase on the table and said, "If the clearing worked, these will still be white tomorrow." After he left, I wrapped the red carnations in newspaper and carried them down near the shoreline and buried them under a big tree. Something thick and rooted, like it could hold what I was releasing. I didn't even have the energy to analyze how the apartment felt afterward. I just collapsed into bed and slept for hours, mourning my poor, scorched bedding like a responsible adult. The next morning, I woke up and went straight to the vase. The white carnations were still white. And later that day, I buried them too, under a different tree in the park, and I was suddenly starving. I went home to an apartment that felt normal, quiet, ordered, like the air belonged to us again. I kept paying attention for days after, waiting for 3:30, waiting for the cold, waiting for the smell, waiting for her shadow at the doorway. But she was gone, and nearly a year later, still gone. So, yeah, that's the story. I know it's a lot. My life has been sprinkled with weird, spooky things like that. But this one really left a mark. If you ever want to hear another, you tell me. So I've got this question that's been sitting in the back of my throat for years, and being down here again has finally pushed it up into the open. My partner, Evan, grew up around this part of southern Arizona. Not exactly in the middle of nowhere, but close enough that the mountains feel like they're always watching the edge of town. He was raised outside a little mining place called Lowell Ridge, not far from the border, and he left young. Ever since I've known him, he's acted like that whole stretch of country is something you don't poke at. Like you don't go digging around in it, you don't wander too far, and you definitely don't stay out after dark. For a long time, I thought it was just complicated feelings. family stuff, old memories, the kind of place you outgrow and don't feel like revisiting. But every time I'd suggest we go back, he'd shut it down fast. Not angry, not defensive, just flat, final. And once, he said something that stuck with me because it felt so oddly chosen. He said, "Something's not right in those mountains." Not dangerous, not rough, not there are people you don't mess with, just not right. Well, this summer we had to come down. Evan's got family business to handle, and I managed to convince him to let me bring the kids, Mara and Jules, so it could be a real trip instead of him doing it alone and tense and exhausted. And the thing is, the town itself is lovely, like genuinely. Bright mornings, friendly little restaurants, the smell of dust and creosote after the sprinklers kick on. I've been enjoying it more than I expected. But Evan's been acting like someone put a tight wire inside his chest. In the daytime, he's almost normal. We've gone on drives, those winding roads where the saguaros stand like they're posing for postcards. We've done short hikes. We'll stop for cold drinks, take pictures, listen to the kids bicker about who saw the most lizards. But the minute evening starts to settle in, like right when the light goes from gold to copper, he changes. It's subtle at first. He starts checking the sky, checking the horizon. He'll glance down side roads like he's counting how many exits we have. His voice gets clipped, like he's trying not to let the kids hear tension in it. And then he gets insistent. We're going back. Now. Not after dark. And it's not the normal kind of caution. It's not, I don't want to hit a deer. It's not, I'm tired. It's like he believes the rules are real. Like if we break them, something notices. One night we were just outside town, barely. We'd taken the kids to look at the sky because it's so clear here, and Mara loves constellations. We weren't even deep in the mountains, just near a turnout where you can see the ridgeline. The sun dropped, the temperature dipped, and it was like someone flipped a switch in him. He said, "We're leaving." And the way he said it made my stomach tighten. Not because he was loud, because he was quiet. The kind of quiet where you realize he's not asking. Back at the hotel, he didn't relax until the door clicked behind us and the deadbolt slid into place. Then he finally exhaled like he'd been holding his breath the whole drive. So I asked him again. I've asked him before, but this time I tried to do it gently, like I wasn't cornering him. "Ev," I said, "what is it? Are you worried about wildlife? People? What?" And he did the same thing he always does. He gave me the vague version, the foggy version. Weird stuff happens out there. That's it. That's all he offered. And I pushed a little, because I couldn't help it. Weird stuff like what? And after that, he shut down completely. The next day we were on a trail. Nothing intense, just a family hike. The kind with scattered shade and little rocks that crunch under your shoes. The kids were ahead, arguing about who got to lead, and I was behind Evan, enjoying the breeze and the smell of sun-warmed pine. Then he stopped so abruptly I nearly bumped into him. He didn't say, "Let's take a break." He didn't point at anything. He just went still, like he was listening. His shoulders tightened, his jaw clenched, and he said, "We're turning around. Right now. No debate." I glanced around, thinking maybe he'd seen a snake or fresh tracks, something practical. But there was nothing. Just trees, shadows, the trail curving ahead like it always does. And I'll be honest, I felt it then too. Not fear exactly, more like the air had changed texture. Like the space between the trees was suddenly deeper than it should be. Like there were places your eyes slid away from without realizing it. The hairs lifted on the back of my neck for no reason I could name. We went back down the trail quickly. Evan kept glancing over his shoulder, not in a dramatic way, more like he couldn't stop himself. Like his body remembered something. That's what's getting under my skin. Because Evan isn't easily spooked. He's a veteran. He's been in places where unsafe is the default setting. He's calm in emergencies. He's the person who stays level when everyone else is panicking. So when he is scared, when he's scared in that quiet, controlled way, it makes me think this isn't just childhood imagination or family baggage. And now I'm here, in a town I actually like, with my kids sleeping a few feet away, and I keep thinking about how the mountains look at dusk, how the shadows stretch down the slopes like fingers, how quickly the dark arrives. And I find myself wondering, half curious, half uneasy, if there are stories people tell down here. Legends locals repeat with a laugh that's just a little too forced. Because Evan won't give me a straight answer. All I know is this: he treats the mountains like they have rules. And he treats nighttime like a door you don't open. So if there's a myth for that, if there's a name for the thing he's afraid of, I feel like I need to hear it. Not to prove him right, just to understand what he's been carrying all these years. And why, the moment the sun starts to slip, it feels like the whole landscape is holding its breath. So, this is something my mom and I do together, and I know how that sounds right out of the gate. We go on paranormal investigations, like, for real, weekend trips, late nights, flashlights, recorders, the whole thing. And honestly, it's been weirdly healing for us. We used to butt heads a lot, but when you're standing shoulder to shoulder in an empty building at 1 a.m., you learn how to trust each other again. We've traveled all over the Midwest, old schools, abandoned hospital wings, a former psych facility once that still gives me chills to think about. But the story that sticks with me most happened at this one big old estate. It's not a manor anymore, not officially. These days it's used for something else, and they don't really want public ghost groups coming through like they used to. So I'm not saying where it is, and I'm not using the real names. I'll just tell you what we learned and what happened. I'll call the couple who built it Edwin and Lillian. Edwin and Lillian were the kind of people who hosted parties with real silverware and a string quartet, local royalty, the it couple of their little region. The house matched that energy: basement, 3 full stories, attic, and a ballroom on the top floor because Lillian loved to entertain. And this was back when indoor plumbing with hot and cold water was something you bragged about like it was a sports car. But the thing is, Lillian was bold. She liked European art, Renaissance stuff, and she had this mural painted on the ceiling of her bedroom. A woman in it, kind of sheer and dreamy and unapologetic. Lillian loved it. The town? Not so much. People came over, saw it, and suddenly Lillian wasn't charming anymore. She was scandalous. The invitations dried up. The smiles turned thin. And while all that was happening, Edwin kept getting pulled away for legal trouble, months at a time, not just in their local courts, but out east in D.C. So Lillian was stuck in this massive house that had been built for laughter and music. And she was just there, alone in it. And then, the part that always makes my stomach drop. Lillian got sick. Stomach cancer, from what we were told. Morphine for the pain. One night, with Edwin away, she took too much. Whether it was an accident or something heavier than that, I don't know. But she didn't wake up. After that, the building changed hands and changed purposes. At one point, it was used like a sanitarium, later a nursing home. The records from those years are messy. People whisper about things that happened there, the kind of things that don't end up in neat little history books. A lot of it is guesswork and rumor, but even the idea of it makes the air in the place feel stained. Anyway, that's the setup. So the night we investigated, things started happening early, like the building didn't need warming up. Now, I should tell you, I'm the type of person people label sensitive. I don't go around advertising it because it sounds dramatic, but I pick up on things. Emotions, presences. Sometimes it feels like walking into a room and immediately knowing someone had just been crying there, even if the room is empty. So we're on the second floor at one point, and Lillian's bedroom is behind me. A few of us are talking quietly about her, about how lonely she must have been, how the house that was meant for parties turned into this kind of gilded cage. And there's this music box sitting on a stairwell between the second and third floor that is absolutely losing its mind. Like going off again and again, louder than it should, faster than it should. Everyone's staring at it, arguing about whether it's a glitch or a draft or whatever. And right behind me, from inside Lillian's room, I hear, clear as a person standing close to your ear, "I'm here." I froze. I turned, and in the center of the room, there was a mannequin wearing this old dress, and right in front of the dress, like it was hovering in the fabric, was this big white orb. Not a little floating speck, big, like the size of a grapefruit, maybe bigger. It floated, slow and steady, and then it just drifted out of view and vanished. And of course, I was the only one who heard the words. Someone had a recorder going, and later you can barely catch it, but the music box is so loud it's almost swallowed. Still, I know what I heard, and I need what I saw. Later on, the investigators wanted to try something on the third floor. Up there, when you reach the top of the stairs, there's a hallway straight ahead, and then stairs going up to the attic. Ballroom to the left. To the right, this smaller hallway that always felt wrong to me. The wall on one side doesn't go all the way up to the ceiling. There's this open gap at the top, like 2 or 3 feet of space where you can see over into the next area. It shouldn't matter, but it does. Something about it makes you feel exposed. They decided to sit me there alone, blindfolded, noise-canceling headphones, spirit box in my hands. Everyone else went down to the second floor to ask questions, and I was basically supposed to be a human antenna and listen. Apparently, they'd tried it earlier with someone else and gotten almost nothing. With me, it was like somebody turned on a faucet. Answers came fast. Dates, times, how many people were in the house, who they wanted to talk to. One voice got sharp and annoyed when a certain investigator spoke, like immediately reacted. And the weirdest part? They told me later that my voice changed while I was answering, like I'd shift tone and cadence depending on what was coming through. I don't remember doing that, but I believe them. My mom's not the kind of person who makes things up to be spooky. It was supposed to last maybe 5 minutes. It went on for almost 20. Every time they'd say, "Okay, we're pulling her out," the spirit box would spit out something like, "Not yet," or "We're not done." And I know that sounds like a horror movie line, I know, but that's the truth of it. We left, got food somewhere like people do after something intense, tried to joke about it, tried to come down from the adrenaline, and I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. About 6 months later, I started dreaming about that estate, and not vague dreams, specific. Like my brain had a map. In the dream, I'd pull up to the building and immediately recognize it. I'd walk through the entrance, past displays on the first floor, mannequins dressed in old outfits, hats in glass cases. Then I'd start up the stairs toward the second floor, and at the landing, there's this mirror. In the dream, I always stopped there, and I would just stare into it, waiting, like I knew something was supposed to step out. Then I'd end up in Lillian's bedroom, and she'd be there, this woman, head tilted slightly like she's trying to understand something that doesn't make sense. and she'd ask me every time, "Where is everyone?" And then, softer, almost hurt, "Why aren't they coming to see me anymore?" And then the dream would jump, like someone snapped their fingers, and suddenly I'm on the third floor, back in that same hallway where I'd been blindfolded during the session. Except now it's different. I'm not seeing it from inside my own body. I'm watching myself like I'm standing off to the side, like a spectator. I can see myself sitting there, blindfolded, hands resting, completely unaware. And above me, hanging over that half wall that doesn't reach the ceiling, are these black humanoid shapes. 3 of them. Their arms draped over the top of the wall like they're leaning on a railing, just watching me. No faces, no details. Just the shape of something person-like, made out of darkness. And then, every single time, my dream would rip me out of that house and drop me somewhere else. A different location entirely, about a couple hours away. I'd be outside long enough to recognize where I was, and then I'd be inside, standing in this infamous corridor that locals call something like the Runner's Hall. A place people talk about the way they talk about sinkholes, like it's just waiting. Everything would be silent, and then a voice would say, "Where's Nolan?" And that was the cue, that exact moment. Every time I heard that question, I would jolt awake. This happened 6 nights in a row. 6. By the 3rd night, I was tired. By the 5th, I was unsettled in a way I can't explain. Like it wasn't just my subconscious remixing a scary memory, like something was using the dream to get a message through. So I finally reached out to the people from the investigation team and told them what I kept hearing. That Lillian was asking where everyone went, why nobody was visiting anymore. That helped a little, but the dreams didn't stop. And then on the next night, when the dream jumped to the 2nd location and the voice asked, "Where's Nolan?" It hit me. This wasn't just about Lillian. It was like the 2nd place was calling for him. I didn't have a way to contact Nolan directly, so I had to tell someone else who could reach him. I basically said, "This is going to sound insane, but please tell him that location is calling out for him." And after that, the dreams stopped. Mostly. Where is everyone? And it's not as relentless as it was then, but it's enough to remind me. Some places don't just hold memories. Sometimes they hold on to people.